and welcome back to the Film Appreciation Podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and as always, I am joined by my delightfully epic co-hosts, Isaac and Marlon.
Good to be here.
And it's been a delayed episode. This is going to come out later than what it should have, but it's special because we're joined by special guest, local Brisbane filmmaker E.C. Lewin, who we've already collaborated with. Do you want to give a little intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm E.C. Lewin, but my name's Elaine, so we'll just go from now on because that's pretentious otherwise. As you've said, you guys talked about my film And They Lived last year.
Yep.
And they also came to my premiere of Slow Humidity. They didn't like it, like rightfully so. But that's how I knew they were. Like I really appreciated that. I like that they didn't blow smoke up my ass, and I like that they were honest about it because big fan of the podcast. You know, dreams really do come true.
Well, it's definitely been a long time coming. That's for sure.
We've been meaning to do this for ages.
Yeah.
How long has it been? It's been like a year.
Well, I mean, it's probably a year ago since we covered Slow Humidity. When was that? Like
that
July?
was, that would have been March when Slow Humidity came out.
But And They Lived.
Oh, sorry, And They Lived.
Was that August?
Okay, so
almost
a year.
That is crazy, actually.
And with the, I guess, guest today, we're doing a special episode, like we said at the end of last podcast. Mm-hmm. We will start off with Furiosa, a Mad Max prequel.
Saga. But prequel.
Saga.
It is prequel.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then the special thing about this episode, aside from a lovely guest, is we're doing George Lucas's The Phantom Menace.
And that's primarily because fuck all came out in May. That's like the main... Elaine's got a nice VHS copy of it.
I've actually got two, the other one's over there.
That's how you know this is going to be a legit conversation.
Yeah.
We never have props. So we're going to be covering Phantom Menace as well. And then I had a pick as well. But we're going to start off with Furiosa.
Yeah, Furiosa, as Marlon said, the prequel to Fury Road, directed obviously by George Miller. So, as you could imagine, it's going to follow Furiosa's story, and it does. But for me, it didn't say anything new. You know, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, she's from the Green Place, which we knew. And she got taken from the Green Place, which we knew. Uh-huh. And I don't know, like it wasn't it was a bad movie, but I just felt like it could have been a lot more interesting, maybe, at least from a plot perspective.
Sure.
But you know, the characters were fun. It was harmless. You know,
I would say immediately to that though that like Mad Max is not even about the plot.
That is true. Well, that's the other thing though.
It's about how crazy it gets.
I actually didn't find the action as fun as Fury Road.
Well, it was more practical in Fury Road, that's for sure.
I mean, I kind of do disagree. I think that in regards to like the way that Fury Road looks, it feels very much like the early to mid 2010s digital filmmaking. Oh, we can do anything. Yeah, a lot of the stunts were practical in Fury Road, but there was still so much a thing of, ooh, look at these big dust clouds. Ooh, look at how we're color grading this thing. It felt very much like the speed ramping.
Yeah.
It's very much an era of the early excitement of digital cinema and visual effects. And in comparison, I much preferred this to Fury Road.
Really?
In my opinion. I think like tenfold, I think it's a more interesting work. I mean, I'd be more interested in hear what you guys have to say about your immediate thoughts.
I suppose... For starters, Isaac and I both only recently watched Fury Road.
Yeah, actually, that's probably what it is, because I watched Fury Road literally the day before.
Oh, and
so it was still fresh on my mind. I hadn't seen it.
Okay.
So it was sort of like, I think I already had in my mind, like, oh, Fury Road was awesome. This better be awesome too, you know?
Yeah.
And I only watched it for the first time 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And so I think Fury Road hasn't had the time to simmer and have the rewatches like I suppose you both have.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it on a plane when I was like in grade 5, grade 6 when it came out. So I know I've watched it many times over the years.
But I too prefer Fury Road. I think this was kind of tacky at times. I didn't like Chris Hemsworth at all.
That's interesting.
I thought it was kind of just stupid and not as enjoyable as Fury Road. It was disappointing, and it was long.
Right.
Holy shit, it dragged.
I didn't feel that.
Oh, I was itching to get out of that cinema, man.
Yeah.
There was a period where I was a little bit bored.
Like for me, it took a little while to get going. Like once Anya came into it, though, I was completely like swept up in it. I found that fantastic, and that action scene. I think I don't know what they call it. on the rig, you know.
Yeah.
That was
rigs.
yeah, but they call it a
The
particular
first one or the?
no, yeah, like when she's driving it for the first time, the
Yeah.
rig, and it's got the spinning thing at the back and all that and
Yeah,
shit. That was better than any action scene in Fury Road. in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and
I
it's
found that
also-
to be the best. Yeah, I found that to be the best.
Is that the one with Quaid and Bales?
Yes.
The where he pops out the hatch?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And there was like the people on. They were on like
Parachutes.
Yeah, hang gliders. Whatever.
That was actually cool.
I was like, a lot of the movie is just like you see things and you're like, oh, that's neat. Yeah. Like, I enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
Well, my review of Fury Road was like, this is a movie where you just go, that is sick, over and over again. Like,
What's crazy is that I found out that sequence, just that one chase scene in Furiosa, took 70 odd days to shoot,
And that's
and
fair
it was
enough,
15 minutes, you know, and 70 days to do that.
And
Because so much of it, I was thinking, how did they do that? Especially when like he was crossing over from one side of the rig to the other, like especially from the hang glider's perspective, and that looked really clean. You know, there were a couple of dodgy CG moments for sure, but that whole sequence was really effective.
I mean, I you guys have all brought up that like the CGI in it, but honestly, in my opinion, I really liked that sort of part of it. I think that that's using CGI in a more obvious way and in a more interesting way than what we usually see. I think that a lot of the visual effects that we see now that we would call ugly are visual effects that are flat and bland and have a lack of depth.
Like in Marvel or something.
Yeah, like the sort of the stereotypical MCU look. But in this film, I do think that the visual effects, when they are wacky, like especially there's that shot of like Furiosa's like eyes, and they do something to them to make them like almost like pop more, and there's a weird like blur around her. Whenever they have these wacky visual effects, they add a lot of depth to the frame in a way that a lot of the visual effects now we don't have. And it was interesting that you guys said or brought up the idea of feeling like Fury Road was more like practical, because in this one I do feel that I felt that they were in real spaces a lot more. Like I could feel that the ground was a real ground, whereas in Fury Road it feels like this very distant place. This gets sort of, it's a middle ground between the Mad Max of like the Road Warrior and the Mad Max of Fury Road. It feels like a good in-between of the two things.
Right.
And visually, on a purely visual level, I was really, really into it, and I preferred the color grading in Furiosa much more than I did Fury Road, just because I think Fury Road is a little bit too... The day for night in Fury Road, I hate.
It's a bit stark.
It's, you know, and I hate it when they did it here as well. But, yeah, that was just immediately...
Yeah, I definitely feel like in some ways Furiosa is in some ways a greater achievement, but perhaps it's not as digestible for sure as Fury Road. See, I've seen Fury Road like 6 times. I've seen it so many times because it's just one of those things that I find endlessly entertaining, and you can kind of focus on it and don't have to focus on it either. Like you can almost turn your brain off. Whereas Furiosa, it does feel like this big saga. It feels like you're going on this journey, but I didn't feel like it was like a. I know how you said like it didn't really add anything, which I
I feel
guess
like it could have easily done a story where like we didn't know as much as we did. Like,
Which
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I wasn't considering Fury Road that much when I was watching it,
Well,
and
I guess
that's
it was
why
literally
maybe
just because I watched it.
maybe
the
that's
day
why I
before.
enjoyed it more. You
I
know?
think that's maybe a little bit of a bias from me, but yeah.
Look, I think everything in it is fine. The CGI doesn't bother me like it does these two, or
I wasn't
you,
really bothered
or
by
you at
CGI.
least.
Only just a couple of little bits, but
But my biggest problem is, too much of a good thing is a bad thing for me, and this is just explosions and action. And I'm not.
I don't feel that though. I think it's pretty restrained in its action, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff where there's a lot of dead space where there's not much happening, action-wise.
I
I
might.
think actually this has more dead space than Fury Road.
Yeah.
Well, Fury Road is
Yeah,
just
this is
like
more-
one long car chase.
It does not stop.
They just go in a
Yeah.
circle and then come back.
It's it's really interesting in that regard, and it's incredibly like it is such an achievement, Fury Road, and we can't deny that.
Yeah.
But the idea that it would ever be to try and do Fury Road again would have been a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Of that same size. I think here it's just a completely different movie. My dad was bringing up the point that like, though he didn't like it as much as Fury Road, he thinks that if he was to watch Fury Road again, he would watch Furiosa beforehand, and the two would work really well as a companion piece. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that completely because I don't really care. I think the Mad Max movies are the best when they ignore continuity completely,
Yeah.
and I think this kind of does that, and that's why I appreciate it.
yeah.
But yeah, I think what I got out of Furiosa in regards to Fury Road is a little bit different than a lot of people maybe, because I think that it's actually to show us about, and I don't know if this is intentional, but to show us the idea of sort of how we view our leaders. You watch Fury Road and you're like, this guy, Morton Joe, is a fucking nut. We got to get him out of here immediately. You watch Furiosa, and Morton Joe is kind of just a competent leader. A crazy leader, but a competent one. Yeah. And he's ultimately an ally in the film. I forgot, what was the name of Chris Hemsworth's character?
Dementus.
Yeah,
Dementus.
They call him like Red Dementus towards the end.
Yeah.
I liked it. I love that he's called Dementus. I think it's an Oscrotus classic.
Yeah.
But like Dementus is such a fucking nut in the movie that you just are so focused on hunting him down that you forget that the system of abuse within the wasteland still continues. And I think ultimately you kind of relate that to our political system at the moment. There's these things of, you're good, mine went off earlier too. But where you have like this guy in power, like a Trump or whatever, and you go, oh, he's so crazy, we need to get him out immediately. But the guy that then comes in after him
doesn't change anything.
He's crazy in a different way, but because he's not Dementus, you don't think about it.
Sure. I mean, it's one of those things, and I agree, because people, I did read some of that online, where it's kind of like Dementus is actually more, as a on the grounds people person, he's much better with his men, or his army. He cares about his people a lot more than Immortan does. Immortan's, to me, a lot more of an oppressor. But Immortan is a competent leader, and the whole Citadel functions really well, despite the fact that he's much more oppressive. Dementus is more of a freeloading, everyone's sort of riding together type thing. But then when he's given control and he has to hunker down, the seatbelts are on him now, and he has to kind of lead and not just be rampaging.
It doesn't work as well.
It works terribly.
I think ultimately it's a thing of ego. Therefore, because the thing with Dementus is he doesn't love his men. He loves the attention that they give him. He feeds off their attention. And Morton Joe doesn't feed off the attention of his followers. He sees them as an army, as a tool. So the issue just therefore becomes when he has too many followers, he doesn't get the same satisfaction. So he's constantly looking for more and more and more, trying to fill that void. Ultimately, he is a cautionary tale on selfishness, and how just because someone is liked doesn't mean they're a good leader. Sometimes it is just that thing of trying to fill that void, and you see someone's ego consume them and nearly cause the end of a functioning society. And I think that really is made explicitly clear when, at the end of the film, spoilers, when Furiosa is like fucking with him, she has no power over him.
Yeah.
She does not get her revenge, as you would expect in a Mad Max film, because he is not a character that gives a shit in that way. What he is getting in that moment is attention. Her saying to him, my life has been molded by you, and I feel this way about you. You have had this power over me, and I'm going to kill you. He hears that and is like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I had that kind of impact, the attention, and it's so much more intimate and gruesome than before. That's interesting. I don't know anything about a Morton Joe, because we don't really need to in the context of Fury Road, and I'm glad that we didn't learn anything more about him, because that doesn't serve his character. But through Dementus, we get a really interesting perspective on what would happen in the wasteland. And I think that we can apply a lot of that to, both the political landscape of today and also just like interpersonal relationships. And that's what I got out of it, just on a personal level. That's why I was really engrossed by it.
It's a hell of a lot more than I got out of it.
Well, I think, when I sort of watch something like that, I don't even try to think of it in that way. Like, in the sense that I don't go reaching sometimes. I'm not saying that you are.
Oh, no, but
I'm just saying that, like, I sit there and I go, ooh, stuff. I don't sit there and go, this is really interesting. Like, I did think that that distinction was fascinating. I definitely picked up on that because Immortan is such a grotesque, filthy thing in Fury Road, and when he died in Fury Road was so awesome. But it was so interesting, that they sort of had him in Furiosa, and A, it didn't expand on him, but B, they sort of work together,
Yeah, he
which
would.
I found really surprising. Because obviously and you don't know through the context of Furiosa, but when you watch Fury Road for the first time, she like kills him and goes like, "Remember me," and it's this whole big moment. But then she actually managed to work together with him beforehand, which I found fascinating.
I think ultimately it is that thing of remember me, I was one of the mothers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Which is a big... I think there's one line in the movie that I just need to say. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's like, "Don't worry, love, you'll be an excellent milker."
Yeah, that's
I
right.
love that
yeah.
line. I don't know why. I just think that's really funny.
Also, that just reminded me, the like her mum at the start.
Yeah.
I hate her acting. She was in
Anyone But You.
Anyone But You, and she was so bad in it.
I
You think
realized.
she was bad in this?
I realized.
great.
I realized.
I don't know if it's just like
I was into it.
Anyone
I just feel like her voice comes across like too like flat. It's just like it really does feel like she's just remembering the script. You know, she's like, you know.
I don't know. I
it's
didn't
like-
really notice it, and I think the reason is, like, don't get
Maybe
me wrong.
as well. Maybe it was just because I watched Anyone But You and she was so
Yeah,
bad
she
in that
was
that it just
terrible
bled
in
over
Anyone
into
But
my
You.
like
I
viewing
think
of
most
this.
people were terrible in Anyone But You.
That's true. That is true.
But I do
Don't watch it.
I kind of liked her, like, it's not that the acting was necessarily bad in my opinion, but I liked the acting that she was giving because I think everyone is giving this
kind of
the
more
B-movie
stoic.
performance.
Yeah, okay,
Exactly what I was.
And that's
gonna
what I
say.
was. That's why as soon as it started, I was like, okay, we're so fucking back. Like I'm
Yeah.
so
Like-
ready.
Like I don't think Chris Hemsworth gives a technically amazing acting performance, like a Oscar performance.
giving a fun one.
But for the context of this film, he works super well.
Yeah.
You know, he fits it so well because it's a specific style, and I appreciate that there's almost that sort of B-movie campiness to it. You know, like it doesn't take itself that seriously, which I appreciate. Because so many movies, like action movies nowadays, are so like self-serious and for themselves.
Yeah.
And this one, like, is so big and so much better than most action movies, but it doesn't seem like it. It just sort of is. You know, like George Miller doesn't. He's not pretentious. He just sort of makes stuff for fun, and he clearly liked this story because they said that this whole story was planned before they shot Fury Road. Like Charlize Theron actually knew this whole backstory already, that she knew all about this sort of stuff, and yeah, like it's good, and I could understand why he wanted to tell that story because he's never done like a sweeping epic, before in a Mad Max movie. So
Have either of you two, I know you and I haven't, seen the originals?
no, I haven't.
Neither.
I haven't, and I wanted to.
My
before
dad
this,
keeps
but I
pestering me to
Ditto.
watch them.
My ditto.
I feel like I really need to at least watch
The original.
the Road Warrior.
Yeah,
but,
my dad
yeah.
endlessly. It's like once a month. Have you seen Road Warrior?
But I mean,
That's it.
with the Mentis, I think one of my problems is visually he looks so similar to Chris Hemsworth in Ragnarok and as Thor.
Right.
And those performances, when the humor, at least in Ragnarok, when he delivers humor, it is actually funny. I don't find him funny in this at all.
I think
And that's because it's a completely different style of humor and really different context of film. Like this
I
one
found
is a
him kind of funny.
I just didn't. But it's because visually they look similar.
I think it's it's the Byron Bay in him. That's
is-
what was really brought out to
it
me. It's like
probably
he
is
is
the
that
best
Byron
surfer
Bay.
dude.
It's the way he speaks. It's his. I don't give a shit. I'm a celebrity attitude comes through in full force in this, and it really works with it. I think casting someone as big as Chris Hemsworth actually is for the film's benefit, and the fact that he's hiding behind the nose in a weird sort of like intertextual way is like showing how like he's hiding behind this character, but it's sort of so reflective of how we may view him in real life.
Yeah. Because I find that Anya's performance was actually quite serious. Like she was taking herself very seriously. In a way.
Comparatively, yeah.
Comparatively, yeah. Like
Yeah.
she didn't have, compared to everyone else, that sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. She didn't try to do an Australian accent, but I thought she worked so well. I mean, I do think that she really did look like a young Charlize Theron, and she does have that sort of quality that, like, famously apparently in Road Warrior, Mel Gibson only has like 13 lines or something, and Anya has like no lines in this as well either, and it's that sort of having that visual presence, without needing to really do much, I think is very important, and I think she had that. I think, I really enjoyed her in it.
And I think that also has this sort of thing of that she's the POV character. She is the sane one in a crazy world. I think that works really well. Something you said earlier to those stuck out to me in regards to the rest of sort of these big blockbusters. I think the reason that this works is because it's sincere. A lot of blockbusters we have aren't
It's made with
sincere.
passion, yeah.
The tongue-in-cheek aspect of it is like they're winking at the audience. When it's tongue-in-cheek here, they're laughing with each other in the movie.
Yeah.
And it feels so disconnected from everything else, and that's what I kind of loved about it.
I wanted to bring up this question because it hasn't done very well at box office at all, which is really quite sad
Really?
because
Oh, yeah, it's fucking hard.
George Miller, you know, he wanted to make one more. He wanted to make The Wasteland, which I think he said would be another prequel, which I do think is kind of an odd choice, but it would follow like Tom Hardy's Mad Max. And I'm wondering if any of you guys have an opinion on, why perhaps you think it might have flopped, considering like
Is it a marketing issue? Is
I don't know. I mean,
just
it's
that
it's
simple?
well reviewed and it's obviously entertaining. Everyone, including the audience who's seen it, loved
And
it.
generally, Australian people get behind big Australian films.
We say we do.
We like to think
We
do.
don't.
Yeah.
And that's because, you know...
But I mean, was Fury Road? Did that?
Yeah,
was
Fury
that,
Road
that was
didn't do
well.
great, though. It didn't do as... Pitch Perfect 2 was a bigger hit that year. Like, in that weekend.
Yeah. But it surpassed expectations though.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think that it is... I do think it is an issue with the marketing. That first trailer, I saw that and I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But I went to go see it because, A, you guys made me. But B, but because I was interested to see what he had to do and I was excited to see something odd. But I just don't think that... Well, A, I just think the movie theatre is dead.
Yeah.
And it's dying. And we've had some hits in the past, but I think that Oppenheimer and Barbie wasn't a big hit because people wanted to see Oppenheimer and Barbie.
It's good for me.
And also, it was probably more because people wanted to see Barbie. And then the Oppenheimer thing...
You got
Oppenheimer
attached to
did
it,
well because...
yeah.
Caught onto it.
And I'm not going to act like that's not the case, because it absolutely is.
No way people would have gone to see a 3-hour thing like that.
Well, so you made it when you said like the trailer. I remember when like we watched the trailer before whatever movie we were watching. Like I was like, dude, that looks so bad.
It
The
does look
trailer
bad.
was not good. But
And
the
I think-
movie is like a lot
and perhaps-
different in vibe to the trailer. Like, the trailer was like completely a different movie. Obviously, it's the same scenes, but the way it was edited.
I think nowadays you need kind of two things. You need either it's got to have some sort of connection to something else that people really are passionate about and is relevant. Like most Marvel movies nowadays aren't doing super well, but Deadpool and Wolverine does because or it's going to for sure because the connotations that it has with past shit that people like is big, but also the marketing online for that movie has been really, really good.
Yeah.
And like Oppenheimer, Barbie, both of those was because the internet backed it, and that's why it did really well. Like Furiosa, the marketing has been mediocre. I think a lot of the posters were fucking awful.
From the director of Happy Feet.
I hate that poster so much.
Oh, it's so hideous. Like the one with him doing this, it looks so bad.
And I also don't like the title.
Yeah, well,
The fuck does it mean a saga?
well, and the
split up
and
into-
I think another big problem.
Split up into chapters.
That's
which was
bullshit.
why was it even split up into chapters? I guess you could skip
I like
forward
it.
in time.
I like it.
The two,
Yeah,
it gives more of a saga-esque thing.
Yeah.
to
When I
each.
saw it with my dad, though, as the last title came up, he just went like a big sigh, like okay, time to get on
I
with
think
it.
Marlon did
Yeah.
the same
Well,
thing.
no,
Like I wanted it to go forever.
I would have much preferred this if it was.
Stacked heads.
What is it? It's 2 hours 40, right?
I think it's 2.5.
Okay, if it was half an hour, 40 minutes shorter, I think it would have done a much
Well,
better
Fury
job
Road
of
was
itself.
2 on the dot.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that sort of runtime works a lot better for this film because I really think one of the biggest detriments to it is too much of one thing. I felt, because I don't watch much
Yeah.
action,
Yeah.
and because I don't fuck with it as much, seeing that much of it is overwhelming.
It definitely, for a movie to, I think, go beyond even a 2-hour mark or like 2 hours 10, it needs to have something else going for it. Like, I think you need to be more emotionally gripped by it, which I think for the most part, it sounds like you were, but for the most part, this doesn't have a really, like a plot-driven, gripping story. I think to something like The Dark Knight, which has a really consistent, fast-paced plot that spans for 2.5 hours, and you're really emotionally invested in it, and it has all these sort of ups and downs. Whereas Furiosa is really sort of slow burn for a while, and then lots and lots of action, and then you have that ending, which is somewhat like I liked the ending a lot, but it is somewhat anticlimactic. The whole last confrontation between Furiosa and Dementus,
Absolutely, yeah.
and I think people may have struggled with that. The fact that there wasn't something else to latch onto, really.
I will say though, I do think that like this compared to maybe Fury Road is something like not my mother in particular. My mother would watch either, but like it has that more of a thing like you would maybe take your mum to see this because there's a romantic element that is actually pretty strong, and you do kind of feel for them as a romantic couple.
Yeah.
You have this idea of mothers and daughters and being abandoned and these systems of power. I think there's actually a lot for people to chew on. And I think there's also a lot more to place it within the context of our world than Fury Road. Fury Road is just a action spectacle, let's get it. It's a movie that you could watch on like it would be perfect for like album syncing. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's where you play a movie and listen to an album at the same time. Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon,
Yeah,
The Wizard of Oz.
I've still been meaning to do that.
It's
I've
kind
never
of
got
fun.
around to it.
Yeah, Dark Side of the Rainbow. It's fun. But it is that thing where I do think there's a few things to, or you could do that with Fury Road as a point because it's so visual. I think this is just more of a traditional movie. It reminded me of kind of like a 80s, 90s James Cameron movie.
Yeah.
Just in the way that its structure was actually so kind of tight and the way that the action scenes were shot and edited. That was sort of what spoke to. Did any of you like compare it to anything else, or was it more just a Fury Road?
Compared it to Fury Road.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I purposely didn't watch it before seeing.
I think that was a good
Furiosa.
move.
Well,
Yeah.
I personally thought more just about like prequels in general when I was sort of reflecting on it. I didn't think of anything at the time. I mean, stuff like that. I did feel like a possible detriment, I'm just thinking of this now in terms of the marketing, is it's probably been a bad idea that they had a Mad Max Saga on it because people wanted to go to watch Mad Max.
More.
And like this distinctly is different from any other Mad Max film, not only because he's not in it, but this is a saga.
Oh, but
He is in
they
it,
do
actually. He's
the
in
shot
it.
of him in the car at
He's
the
in
top
it.
of the mountain.
He's in it for a scene. Well, not even
I
a
thought
shot.
I hated that.
Yeah,
That pissed
I've
me off
no,
so much.
there
I
is
hated that.
no
It
need.
was just there to be like, haha, look, it's a Mad Max
Yeah,
movie.
there's
But, like, my
'cause
dad
it's,
liked it,
It's
so,
the exact same shot as in Fury Road.
Did he not move? He's just been there the whole time.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
walking
Why is it-
around
What is this
hill.
man doing?
He's just chilling.
Is that his house?
Yeah, he just
That's his house. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
his lookout. That's his smoke spot.
What a loser.
He was on Smoko.
Dude's just looking at the desert every day.
He just, yeah.
Get a life, Max.
Punching darts, getting fuel. You know. Good on. Good on. That's the life. That's the way.
and bullets.
Yeah.
Oh, and
that
bullets,
shot
sorry.
was just in there so you could be like, oh, I've seen
That's
Fury
a
Road.
studio.
That's from Fury
That's a
Road.
studio note.
Oh, Max.
Yeah.
That's Max.
And also, like, I think you have to put Max in the title. You have to put Mad Max in the title, otherwise people aren't going to see it.
Yeah.
And people need to know what the fuck this is. Fury Road came out a really long time ago, to the point where you guys hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
it's
not like
9 years
that makes
ago.
sense. Like, it's
9 years
completely.
ago.
I saw
Yeah.
it when it came out.
Is it
not-
2015 or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I think I saw it that year or the year after, and like I loved it when I was I don't know 13 because it's sick. But like it's been a long time, and I just think the film landscape is a very different place now, and I don't think that people have the patience for a film like this. Not the patience, but I just don't think it is familiar, and I think that this would have done really well in like the 90s.
Yeah,
or,
it's
like,
not
the
a-
early
it's-
2000s.
It's not a safe movie, that's for sure.
No.
And nowadays, for the most part, it really seems like people need something to be safe, which is why the Barbenheimer thing was so crazy, because Oppenheimer was definitely not the average movie that someone would choose to go see. And Barbie, obviously, I think went against a lot of people's sort of presuppositions of what it was going to be, which I admired. But like other than those two, I don't really remember any other huge movie that wasn't sort of as expected, studio cookie cutter bullshit.
I mean, I do think we have to acknowledge the fact that Oppenheimer was a real person, and that's why people went to go see that. And Barbie is a huge franchise that has also had their roots in film for a really long time. And
I remember watching a Barbie movie when I was like
I'm
5.
not gonna lie, I've watched basically all the Barbie movies.
Yeah.
just quickly on
Have
the
you
record,
logged them on Letterboxd?
I think I have, yeah.
You got it, because on the record,
I watched
just on
them
the
like I used to watch them with my sister.
Yeah, my cousin.
Princess Charm School, great film.
I watched like
12
the
Dancing
Aqua one.
Princesses,
What's the
classic.
Thankfully, my
What's the
sister was
fairy
never
ones?
into Barbie.
Fairytopia.
I watched the water
those
one.
Those are the classic ones.
The Barbie Aqua.
There's
Water.
There's so many
Mermaid.
Barbie
Are you
movies.
talking about Mermaidia, or are you talking
No.
about A Mermaid's Tale?
Oh, I
And
didn't
there's
know.
the
I
Three
haven't-
Musketeers one.
Oh yeah, that one goes hard.
That
too.
was actually pretty
That
good.
one's good. Princess
I actually have
of the
fond
Pauper.
memories of that one.
What
Nick,
the fuck
have you
are we
seen
talking
any-
Glad I've
about?
hijacked the Faps
Dude,
podcast to talk
there's
about the Barbie.
infinite Barbie movies.
They're
You can just think of anything. and
Bless
it's
my
Barbie
sister's cotton socks that the shit she wanted to watch when she was younger was like 10 Things I Hate About You.
To be fair,
And Legally Blonde, like good ass movies, and not Barbie.
Movie. Well, your sister's
fucking-
older than you, though.
Yeah.
12
you,
Dancing
like-
Princesses though. has like if it was shot properly and actually like the script was redone a little bit to fit like a more contemporary audience, I think that has the potential to be a really interesting movie about grief and about changing parental standards and stuff.
God, I can't figure out which Barbie
Or
movie I
something.
watched.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Jesus
anyway.
Christ.
Oh, actually, there's a scene in Furiosa that you know the one where they're like burning the mum, and there's
yeah,
like the
Star,
guy with
yeah.
his horns.
Yeah.
That was so sick.
That was
I was like, that is fucking awesome.
one of 2 biblical references.
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
as well, mentioning. I wrote it down as the Furiosa as the 5th rider of the apocalypse,
Yeah.
which I found really.
I think he mentioned that that's
The History Man says it. Actually, how cool is the History Man too? That was the other thing. He's fucking sick.
Oh yeah.
The
Yeah.
tattoos.
Oh, you can't deny the aesthetic of that whole world is so fantastic, and like
the
it's,
idea that he's telling the story.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, that's true. I guess.
But I have so
Sometimes where
much.
he's like saying stuff, and you're like, oh, okay.
I have so sorry. I have so much admiration for George Miller because he has been the only one to direct this whole franchise, and
That's true.
it's so big and so interesting, and it is like the Australian franchise that we have, and it is like a really interesting, really well developed world, but that he's done naturally. It's not like Star Wars, which we'll get to, but in the sense that Star Wars has all this, extra canon or whatever you want to call it, bullshit that sort of has developed the story. Like Mad Max is just sort of developed as one film franchise. There's nothing else, no TV shows, there's no fucking books, nothing, and it's just been developed through this one guy, and I think that's really impressive.
There's comics and also a video game.
That doesn't count.
I mean,
Comics is too niche to count.
No, but George Miller wrote them.
Oh, okay. well.
I don't know if he wrote them exactly, but he did have a hand in it.
Yeah.
But there is, as you said, it's the quintessential like Australiana, and I think it really like this one especially. The reason I don't love Fury Road as much now is that it doesn't have that Australian absurdity that the previous 3 do. And from what I've seen of it, and this one does, and it brings it in, and it makes it even more prominent. The fact that the opening shot of Dementis is him looking at a really cool bike, that I love that sort of thing.
I was thrilled at the start when it was like zoomed in on Australia.
I love that.
And it went into Australia. I went, damn, that's our home.
I live there.
I live here. Like this never happens.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that got me through anyone
Anytime
but you.
Australia gets mentioned in anything,
Anyone
like,
but anyone but you and Fall Guy, which were both movies. I was like, man, I'm watching them. And I'm
Oh, when I
like,
was watching Anyone
going,
But You,
holy
when
shit.
they're in Sydney, I'm like, I've been
I've
there.
been there. I had a coffee there. You know?
It's when the what's it called, the in any like apocalypse movie or like world ending movie, they have that one shot of like the Sydney Opera House and
Getting blown up.
destroyed, or everyone clapping outside the Sydney
Yeah.
Opera House. I love it. It's like that's our one icon to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and it's not in here, and I love it.
No, it went straight bang in the middle of the Northern Territory.
Hell yeah, and then you see that and you're like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's probably where shit would be happening over there.
I did have one other point though that I did write down just before anything else is the idea of memento mori does pop up quite a bit in the film. We hold on this shot of a skull on the road, and we hold on it for quite a while before a bike comes through and
the lizards come through it?
Yeah, and the lizard goes through it and crushes it. Now in memento mori, from what I remember from grade 12 visual art, memento mori is painting a skull next to living things or things of nature such as fruit or flowers or something like that. And so I think that it's interesting that there is no fruit in this world, and so it's just the lizard, and then that being crushed by something that is basically a machine. And that can say a lot about reminding us of death and reminding us that because memento mori is this reminder of death.
Remember, you must die.
Yeah, and so it is this almost saying maybe this apocalypse was caused through either natural disaster or by man-made things, and I think that's really interesting. And that's made, and there's a few other things like that.
Is it implied that it was like man-made?
Yeah, I think that's.
from that it really
I guess
set into me.
Yeah.
Well, they
You
say
just
that,
assume any
but they say that a lot in Fury Road. Actually.
Yeah, I remember like hearing
Yeah.
did they say
Man-made.
stuff about like nuclear.
No, well,
related?
all the girls say to like Immortan Joe and to Nux in Fury Road, they say shit like, well, who destroyed the
who
world?
destroyed the world
To them.
Yeah.
You know, like, because when Nux was like, oh, it's not my fault, she's like, well, who destroyed the world? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again we have that thing of like the 5th ride of the apocalypse, and finally, I think it's really made clear to me because there's a few of these other references to either skulls or flowers are actually a big thing and nature.
Oh,
is
with
a
the
really
hair.
big- Yeah, and so we
the-
have...
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And we actually have a straight up memento mori in the end where you have someone growing on top of like a dead body with Dementus and the nut. As my dad said, Furiosa, nut on Chris Hemsworth. And I was like, good job, Dad.
Oh, in terms of that Christian theology, the opening shot is taking the peach out of the tree, which is literally the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like so clearly. That's what that is. I think pretty obviously.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say maybe not, just because in the context of the Garden of Eden, it was something that was tempted, there was no sense of tempting, and I think it's more so to do with, I mean, it makes sense that it's there, but because it's a fruit.
But if you envision those guys who are,
is that they had gone out further than they were supposed to, because the other girls like.
but also if you envision those guys who come in and they're all sort of darkly clothed, like if they're sin more or less, because this green place does seem like a utopia.
Pure.
You know, and for them to come in like man, let's call it man, come in, you know, that's where I think that was going. And that sort of visually, I mean, there's so many, you know, Renaissance paintings that look so much like that, you know.
Only because for a project that I'm working on at the moment, I've been reading a lot of scripture, and I've been reading that opening Genesis quite a bit in different translations. I cannot believe this is getting brought up. But if it was someone to being taking someone out of the Garden of Eden, it would therefore imply that that's God. And so I think that more makes sense that these people, these gangs, that is God in this
Become
world.
God, yeah. Right.
They are God.
They
and
rule, yeah.
that makes sense to me. And in the Memento Mori, the final thing is that Dementus says, we are the already dead.
Right.
That is one of the final things that he says to her. And so at that point, I was like, there we go. Paid off. So, yeah, I think that my point is, there's a lot going on here. And
More than seemingly what's going on.
yeah, or at least that's what I got out of it. I was also just really excited to be in the theatre. It had been a while since I've been. So I'm sure that happened.
Yeah, 'cause you've slowed down on films a little bit, haven't you?
It's been a rough couple of months, Marlon. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
Well, it's been a fucking dry year at the cinema for the most part. There's been like 2 things I've really loved, and that's kind of it.
Challenges and
June.
Yeah, I mean, I know it
June
kind of came out
saved
last year, but
June
Zone of
saved-
Interest really.
Okay.
Because Zone of Interest did come out this year here, so it's going on my list for this year.
I saw it last year because there was
for
a...
the festival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
I didn't get the chance to see that, unfortunately, so it's still going on this year's list. But that was great. as
You
well.
do the crossover, which makes so
I
much
know,
sense for
it's just
Australia.
easier, 'cause
It makes
it
so
sucks
much sense
here.
in Australia.
And I'm not. Yeah.
So many big films come out Boxing Day, which is 4 days before. Yeah, 5 days. Anyway,
Anyway, it's fine.
do we feel like wrapping up
Yeah, yeah.
Furiosa?
Go ratings.
Start with you, Nick.
The problem is because we don't do like point ratings, like something 0.5. So I'm going to
Just
go...
round down.
Yeah. Or down.
Oh, damn.
I'm going to round down. I'll go 7. I'll go 7. Yeah, I just don't feel like it's all enough to be an 8.
Go on a loop.
Can you go that way?
I'm giving it a 6 today.
Okay.
I think 6, 7, and I'll settle with a 6 today. I've made my point.
I think I'll go a 7 as well. Yeah, there were times where I felt it was a little boring, and then obviously the plot I felt like wasn't super interesting just because I was like, yeah, I already knew all of this. Like, you haven't told me anything except, Dementus existed. But it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it, so, yeah.
The issue for me is like same with you. You had to adjust to this. Is I'm very familiar to like a 5-star ratings instead of like the 10s, and so even though
You can give it
giving a 10 out of 10 feels very different than giving something 5 stars, but I'm giving it a 10.
Do it, yeah.
I think it's
great.
if we're going Fantano, I'm going a strong 9 to a light 10. I just think it's one of the most interesting action movies that I've seen in a really, really long time. I think there's a lot going on. As someone who's wanted to see something that is really indulges in Australian culture and Australian imagery, this absolutely did that for me. And the type of action movie that I love was on full display here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you gave it 10 straight away after you saw it. So
Yeah, I was in.
would hate for you to...
to back off.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, with that, you're introducing the Phantom Menace.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, written and directed by George Lucas, was the fourth cinematically released Star Wars film.
You may have heard of it.
You may have heard of it.
It's kind of niche. You may not have seen it.
After the special edition trilogy released in 1997 to promote this film, Lucas and co wanted to shoot all of them back to back and then quickly realized that's not going to happen. One of the most successful independent films of all time. And a very controversial film in the Star Wars saga.
Yeah. You could just say that about the prequels.
I think especially this one, given the Mr. Plinkett reviews. Was such a cultural phenomenon of early internet culture.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the story of little Anakin Skywalker and Jedis and
Jar Jar
Darth
Binks.
Maul and Jar Jar Binks.
Yep, he's the key to all of this. So.
Darth Jar Jar.
And
Padme. And
trading. And
Trade wars.
Politics.
Trade wars.
I have that note.
the taxation
a
of
galactic
trade routes.
alliance.
I'm not gonna lie.
Blockades.
Everyone hates on the politics in this movie. Like, well, nobody cares about politics. I kind of like wish they went more into it.
Yeah,
I think that would have been super. Like, I think they didn't really do a good job of handling it. Like, they could have done it way more interestingly. They sort of got caught between like, do we want to actually care about the politics and
This blockade is perfect.
just have it there as the plot? But I think it's cool, man. Like. But they made a Star Wars movie, and you know it's a war movie, so it makes sense that they should go into politics.
I agree.
And it, like, for me, because the main thing that people don't seem to realize is he wanted it to be different.
Yeah.
He wanted the prequels to be super different. He didn't want to try and recapture what the originals were. And also, the fact that this sort of stuff is coming up obviously would make sense given that they are in a, normal democratic time and there's politicians and all sorts everywhere. Because obviously during the originals, the Empire just rules. There's no questions or doubts. That's just the law, like they rule. And the rebels, they don't have to debate stuff. It's like we just have to defeat them. It's so much more simpler. And I think some of the, if you want to call it subtleties of the prequels, is the fact that there's a lot more grey. People are not as trustworthy. There's more like political stuff going on, and I think it makes it more interesting. Not that the prequels are better than the originals, because they're not, but still. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Like, I know that like we've talked about the prequels a little bit every now and then, but like as you've gotten old, and I know we both love Star Wars quite a bit. Like, what Empire is one of your favorites of all time.
Yeah, it's incredible. Look, off the bat, I want to get this out of the way, and I think we can all agree is Star Wars fans are also Star Wars' biggest haters. We drag, more so the really, really, really passionate, drag it down more than it needs to be in some respect. And every time, I'll say the most recent time I've watched The Phantom Menace, I've liked it more than the last. Because initially, I fucking hated it.
Agreed.
For so many years, this is shit, this is piss, fucking, why bother? That's me with Attack of the Clones now. I think Attack of the Clones is horrible.
I think we need to dedicate a whole
We can't
get to Attack of the Clones in a minute.
Okay.
We can't review the whole saga now.
The Phantom Menace gets more hate than it deserves, I think.
Yeah. I mean...
Way more.
I think that I really wanted to raise this question with you guys. How much of your opinions on this movie were based on or influenced by maybe internet critics of your childhood? Because for me, that was the case wholeheartedly. I loved watching film YouTube as a kid. And so these opinions by Doug Walker and I know Jeremy Johns. If that,
he was my favorite.
Yeah, so I love
Jeremy Johns.
Screen Junkies, like these guys, these were these things that I held not to be an opinion but a fact because I was too young to distinguish the two.
I think when I was a kid I really enjoyed the Phantom Menace, but then as I got older, early teens and so on, that's when you sort of start to take in, as you said, like reviews and stuff, and you're like, nah, this thing is so bad. And then when I rewatched it, because I hadn't watched it in a while, I was sitting there like, it's not even like bad. It's like, it's not the greatest movie ever, but it's not bad. It's just kind of adequate,
Yeah. I think... Sorry, go. No, you go.
My dad and mum heavily raised me on the original trilogy, and they bought me the prequel trilogy. And then in the background, every time they'd pass through while I was watching, don't watch that shit. Put A New Hope on, we'll sit down and watch it together. Or this is nothing compared to what we grew up watching in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And so as much like I loved, for instance, all the lightsabers in Attack of the Clones all the time. But this has more to appreciate when you get older as well. There's a little bit more you can think about, I think, than Attack of the Clones. But so that was my influence originally with the Phantom Menace, was parents just going, "Duh."
Well, I've never been a massive Star Wars fan, really, and I didn't grow up with them, you know? Like, and my parents don't, well, they don't care about much movies in general, to be fair. But, like, I watched the originals. I don't actually remember when I watched the prequels. I don't think I was, like, until I was 12 or 13 or something, like 10, something, like, around that time. I didn't watch them when I was a really young kid. And I only watched them the once, and, like, I didn't really think about it. Watched a lot more, like, superhero stuff. I was much more into like comic book movies when I was a kid than Star Wars. And then, yeah, as I've gotten older, obviously I've rewatched a few of them. I've gone through the whole Disney stuff and seen that just completely collapse. And like every time I watch a Disney thing now, I seem to hate it more. Like, and I avoid them most of the time. Like at this point, I just know I don't like them. The only Disney thing that I've watched that I like is Andor. Andor and like the first season of The Mandalorian, I really enjoyed because it was simple. But other than Andor, like every Star Wars thing I've watched, I'm like, eh. And it's so big now, and because I'm not a huge fan, like I could never watch Ahsoka because I don't watch any of that stuff.
That
But,
also
you know,
sucks.
That was fucked. Cannot believe I sat through that.
Well, I feel like, I mean, I loved the whole world of Star Wars. Like, when I was a kid, even, like, recently, you know, I would just sit there with my friends and we'd just be talking about stuff. Like, we wouldn't be talking about the movies. We'd be talking about the lore. And we'd be, like, coming up with, like, oh, what would be your clone trooper if you could design one? Like, all that stupid stuff. But it's, like, that's what makes Star Wars so fun. Because, like, the world, and that's what, like, I was going to say, like, in regards to this movie even, like, George Lucas is so good at building the broad strokes of the world. But I think he sometimes struggles when it gets down to the details. And I think, like for example, even just, like, the fight at the end, the Darth Maul, you know, Duel of the Fates. Like, the big idea of that fight is amazing. Like, you know, it's the fight for Anakin's fate, like, whether or not he's going to become evil in the end because of being raised by Obi-Wan versus if he had the father figure of Qui-Gon and so on. But, like, I just think there's stuff, like then there's, like... the way that Obi-Wan just jumps... maybe he didn't choreograph the fight, to be fair, but like how Obi-Wan can just jump over him and turn it like... Unless you like interpret that as that being like in slow motion and really he jumped really fast. But then there's also the other thing of like the Force super speed that they have at the start, which
And
never
then they
gets used
don't
again.
use...
Like I think there's those small details that sometimes... they're not that big and they don't matter that much.
They come back to
It's because no one was like looking over his shoulder on the prequel.
That's also
he
true.
He
He was
just
all-
wrote them,
yeah.
and that was kind of it. Like apparently, for A New Hope, there was a lot of
Yeah, no,
dissection
the whole
of the
it got
script.
re-edited.
He
by
divorced Marsha.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
That is actually
If you
true.
really are going to bring up anything, it's that he divorced Marsha.
Yeah, that
And
that
she
carried
wasn't
the
there.
original trilogy.
Like, she edited New York. I don't know if you guys have seen New York, New York. It's a Scorsese film.
I've been meaning...
That
one of the
film
only
is so
I haven't.
incredibly long, it's really hard to find. But Marsha Lucas saved that movie to be anything competent. I do think, though, look, I have an incredibly positive opinion of this movie. It is my favourite Star Wars movie.
Wow.
I don't like... Yeah, I know. But I'll get into... Because...
Damn.
Opinions are like assholes.
Yeah.
Everyone's got one.
I mean, it's not as controversial saying some shit like, I don't know, Force Awakens is your
That
favorite
would
or
be
something.
insane. No, and that's the thing is that I don't like any... Actually, that's not true. I don't hate The Last Jedi. That's probably
I'm totally
that's
with
my
you.
favourite of the three.
Yeah,
And but if
agreed.
you look at all the things of Star Wars that I like, it is the stuff that makes us deconstruct our views of power and our systems of power. And our... Yeah. And so The Phantom Menace gets closest to the type of Star Wars that I like than any other film. I think Empire is far more competent as a film. It's far more watchable. It's shot better. There's a lot more character stuff going on. I'm never going to deny that. And A New Hope is a incredibly like innovative film, and I respect it on those merits. But I think that The Phantom Menace has a lot to say, and it's actually an incredibly interesting companion piece to the original trilogy. 2 and 3 are not. Including 3. I don't think that's a competent film either. I think that when they started shooting digitally, it didn't work as well. But with this one, I rewatched it again last night just to double check, make sure everything was all together. And I wrote it down, not in that book, but in this year. But it opens with describing the Jedi as guardians of peace. Now, I think this was a really interesting point because people often say that the Jedi of this film is different to the Jedi of the original trilogy, and I think that's absolutely an accurate point. But I think that that was on purpose. I think that George Lucas establishes this idea of them being the guardians of peace. That's how we would describe the Jedi after watching the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. But this film aims to basically confront that and say, and this entire film is basically to tell its young audience. George Lucas said, I made this film for 12 to 14-year-olds, people who are just starting to make their way in the world, and to have them, teach them a lesson. And I believe that this film basically says you need to maybe not distrust, but question the systems of power, whether that be the Senate, whether that be, your leaders, whether that be the Jedi, including the Jedi, and that the Jedi are a part of it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I find interesting about this film.
Because I think there's definitely a distinction, and I think I agree with the fact that Phantom Menace on its own, I think is perhaps a bit more of a special kind of thing, because it's so different to the other two prequels. And I've actually heard some people who really shit on Phantom Menace saying that they should have had like Hayden Christensen throughout all three, because then it would be, because it's like this weird jump where you have Phantom Menace and then there's this massive jump, and then 2 and 3 are really close together, and it's kind of like its own thing. And obviously you can see, like 3 is different because I think 3 for the most part is what he like wanted to do, and like all of the Order 66 stuff is like really, really great and really powerful stuff. But I mean, Attack of the Clones to me strikes me as like he just got hit with so much crap about things people didn't like about Phantom Menace, and so Attack of the Clones has enormous multiple lightsaber duels like on Geonosis and all that sort of stuff, and it's got all this other sort of crap, and there's a lot more plot stuff. There's romance, and it's all blah blah, like trying to recapture different things, and whereas Phantom Menace is completely devoid. Like it's so different to everything else.
The other thing as well is like I don't know why people complained so much about Jake Lloyd.
Yeah, I've got
not bad. Like as far as child actors go,
the dialogue is just bad.
Okay, I will say.
But like as far as child actors go, like he's not bad.
He wasn't the best one there. And there's a really great thing of this
they could have found
the behind the scenes thing where they're going through all the actors, and there's clearly people who are better. I watched this movie twice at home in preparation for this. Yeah. The second time not as like I didn't pay as much attention. Mm-hmm. But both times I watched it as my sister walked past, she laughed at something that Jake Lloyd said.
That's fair. So I mean, it's the yippee, but like
I like that. We reference that shit all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think like it wasn't like it was terrible. It wasn't like oh my god, this guy cannot act.
I think the problem is the way he's written and the way he performs it is it's so lighthearted and whimsical, but the rest of the film is pretty serious and dry. Yeah. And so when you have shit like Duel of the Fates is happening, meanwhile, he gets in the spaceship and starts going, "Whoa!" It's so goofy.
I will say, I did notice the tonal whiplash in those scenes. It's it is funny. I mean, look, and I will say, like, I do think that Attack of the Clones is a response to Phantom Menace and the reception it got, and he was actually just using that film as a way to experiment with digital filmmaking, and that's okay. I respect it. I will say, watching Attack of the Clones on VHS kind of masks a lot of the shitty effects. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, that's the way to watch it.
Lower the quality?
No, but it's just analog.
Pixelate the shit out of it.
It's actually not pixelation, it's lines, which means it's a different kind of distortion, but let's not get into that now. We need a very specific type of autism for this discussion. And I think that...
Rain check that.
There's... I guess the other thing that I feel the need to mention is that this film is not, compared to the other two, this film is actually just about the start of a war. And you talked about earlier the simplicity of the idea of the empire. That's because fascism is very simple.
Yeah.
It's a very cut and dry thing, and it's very easy to describe, and it's very easy to point out.
And the empire is just the Nazis.
I mean, yeah, it's that. Really it's America.
Yeah. But like the rebels are essentially supposed to be like the Allies / America.
No, the rebels are the Viet Cong.
What?
This is what George Lucas has said. The original trilogy is both uses the imagery of Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will, but it's more specifically about the Americans who were coming into Vietnam and trying to take Vietnam with the type of
Do you mean this narratively or aesthetically?
narratively.
I mean, it makes a lot of
The
sense
structure is
considering the time
different,
it's
though, no?
written.
Yeah, no, because
The
George,
political structures are very different though between the Empire and America. Like I understand the idea of having the empirical sort of beliefs and trying to expand, but like the Empire is very clearly not a democracy, whereas America at least tries to be one. You know,
I think
at worst.
I think but it is that sort of thing of. I think maybe he has said before. This is his words.
Yeah.
That it is America, but it's also the Nazis, and it's these sort of things.
It's
But
probably
it's
just a
these
blend
regimes.
of like
Right.
imperialism. Really, is just the
What? Yeah.
Well, Indiana
And what's
Jones
more
as well deals with the Nazis.
Yeah,
literally.
that's more Spielberg in a lot of ways, but
Right.
but yeah, it is there, and I think it's more important though to acknowledge that the rebels are like a Viet Cong type of group.
Resistance.
They are resistance fighters. They are freedom fighters. They are working in guerrilla tactics, and they are not. And you know, I think it's insane that actually I might just not go there, but just for the sake. But there's a thing where it is supposed to be about people who are facing resistance of a, you know, regime of any kind, and that happens to be the U.S. at times, actually frequently. And so, you know, and I think that a lot of people misinterpret the original trilogy from that place. It's just meant to be about people fighting for freedom and being really, you know, gritty about it.
Uh-huh.
They are, you know, doing it that way. And so we see it here. It is about the start of that war. This film basically says how does fascism come into power?
Mm-hmm.
This is the answer to that. It is a lot more complex than the original trilogy, but I think it is effective because there is not a single positive force of power in the Phantom Menace.
But I think what's interesting about that is if that's kind of what we're going with, then obviously the source of fascism and the source of evil sprouts from the democratic allies type thing. Like the Jedi and all that allow, what do they call him in this? What's this? Palpatine. Palpatine to get into power, and I can't believe I forgot that. Came into power and shit.
Palpatine's returned.
Oh fuck! And then
he's also just populist too, where he just like appeals to what the people want, supposedly. But
And that it's also, sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay.
But that it is, Palpatine is elected democratically,
yeah.
yes,
and it's so interesting.
Actually, that goes back to Padme's change of heart, basically, where, like, you know, at the start of the movie, when they go to, like, Tatooine, she's like, super, oh, dude, the Republic's awesome. Like, how is there slaves here? And then they're like, oh, we're not part of the Republic.
A vote of
But then,
no
like,
confidence.
Then, like, immediately she just switches to, like, dude, the Republic doesn't work, man. There's no, like, it's not built up. Like, I think that's an interesting switch, but I feel like there's not enough there to be, like, they should have focused more on it, I think. They should have spent more time with Padme's, like, oh, dude, the Republic kind of sucks, yo.
I think that ultimately she felt betrayed by it, but she only ever says one thing. One of the first things she says in the movie, I think, it kind of sums up the whole thing. I will not condone a course of action that will lead to war. That is all that she is concerned about.
Yeah.
So therefore she's creating allies and she's just trying to create power, whether it is or is not in an institution. And she's trying to, you know, I mean, yeah, she's a senator in the rest of them, so she's just trying to do it that way. But it is this, I think, yeah.
Also, Naboo's political structure confuses me so much because she's the elected queen, and she's a child, so the people elected a child.
I think
She's an elected queen.
Yeah, they elect them and they serve like 2 terms. So basically, just like
Presidents.
They're either president or prime minister style thing. I don't really.
And then they wanted her for a third, and she.
It's so
didn't.
strange. It's so strange.
I think it doesn't matter.
I like
But
my
I
head
get what you
canon.
mean.
My
No,
head canon is it's
it
like
definitely doesn't
Palpatine's
matter.
manipulated it so you could have a child who'd be easier to control, and then it turned out it wasn't. But blah 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 blah.
I think
Because
ultimately,
otherwise, it's like
I think it's ultimately kind of comes more to a point of the like, you know, really like wanky like royalty thing where it's like, yeah, a child can be a leader
like
in that way, like sort of really high class sort of
Just
mentalities.
make fun of it.
And also, like, wouldn't you want a child in power if you could try and manipulate them?
That's what I
they
mean,
just
yeah.
accidentally happen to have someone who is incredibly competent.
Exactly. That's yeah.
You know,
I also find it so funny when like Padme's like leading the team. It's like that's a 14-year-old. Like imagine
Like
imagine
through the
imagine you're like going to go
She's got some-
fight
she's got
some
some
people.
balls,
Now
though.
a 14-year-old is
There's
like
that part in when Darth Maul shows up and she like doesn't even give a fuck. He just
Dude,
is-
that motherfucker don't flinch.
he's there. She's like, all right, we'll just go around.
Yeah.
No problem.
Let's go the other way.
No biggie.
Caleb actually said this too. Like when people complain about their like not being powerful, not powerful, but like figures for women to look up to and so on. Like you have Padme and Leia. Like they are both badass people who are very active within the story.
And Leia,
see the,
Leia was the most competent.
Well, Leia is
Yeah.
Leia is
You
literally
see
the
that.
one who does the stuff in The New Hope.
And
Like,
she's the one who's the leader of the rebellion.
Yeah.
It's not Luke.
It's so weird to me
Exactly,
that like,
yeah.
like I feel like there's always. I mean, obviously you can say that we need more, but to say like it never happened is so strange.
Did you see the George Lucas's discussion at the Cannes Film Festival? He had an in conversation with at Cannes when he got his honorary award, and it was really interesting. He said it's not enough to put a woman in pants for her to be a strong female character. All my characters, the most competent people in my films, in the Star Wars films, were Padme and Leia, and yeah, they wore dresses because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
She's a princess.
Yeah.
And I found that really
And there's no
interesting.
bras and specs. That's also.
But it's like she doesn't need to be on the ground, swinging a laser sword
No,
to.
it's how she holds herself and interacts with other characters, which is also very important. Yeah.
I mean, I think like some of the best lines in this movie are both from Padme and also from Shmi Skywalker.
Yeah.
Shmi. But there's a line in it I wanted to just bring up briefly where she says to Anakin, "Don't look back." Like she's just like, "Don't look back, don't look back," and that like really fucking hurts. And it's like, well, why didn't you just go and free her? Because that was the last thing his mother said to him. And I think that's kind of like a beautiful thing of like.
Poignancy.
And you see how much like she thinks of like her son becoming a Jedi as this like this will change his life, this will save him, this is going to be this amazing beautiful thing. And then we see what happens to him, how he is treated in these institutions, and it is like this really like heartbreaking thing of this is his opportunity and like it's not like going that way.
That was one of the most effective parts of Attack of the Clones was when he went back to Tatooine. I found that whole thing, like his performance was
Corny.
corny.
Yeah.
Where I slaughtered them like animals.
Not
But-
just the men.
The women and the children.
That's such a great.
My dad cut that. So when I was really young, I really wanted to watch them, but I was a very sensitive kid. So my dad fully recut like Attack of the Clones to take out some stuff. And so now when I watch it, I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this scene? Oh my gosh, he's killing them all. Like,
Yeah, but I agree. I mean, one thing that I find kind of strange is that they say that like they're not charismatic characters in. I mean, the prequels in general, but definitely in the Phantom Menace, they said like it's also dry.
I agree that they're a little bit dry though.
I mean, some of them I do. Like I think
That's kind of
I
like,
think
that's kind of
I
the
think
appeal though.
Obi-Wan doesn't get enough. I feel
Yeah,
like he
everyone's
should.
like belly in it.
But I found Qui-Gon to be quite a charismatic.
Qui-Gon is fucking awesome.
such a charismatic
He is
character.
so awesome. I love Qui-Gon.
He's like the most incompetent Jedi who's ever lived.
Are you talking his lightsaber?
In
What do you
this
mean, though?
movie.
What do you mean though?
His
Like,
lightsaber skills.
Like, he's not that he's incompetent, he's just that he's reckless and he's just
I think-
guessing it.
I think that's literally the point of his.
No, I think so too.
Because like the whole point of Qui-Gon is like the Jedi becomes so detached because that's like their whole philosophy. It's like a pseudo Buddhism, where they just sort of have to take themselves out of the world to avoid suffering and so on. And then Qui-Gon, he's like basically realized, dude, this shit does not work. We need to change how we work, how we like run ourselves.
You do say that, but Qui-Gon was never completely trusting of Palpatine, whereas Mace Windu and Yoda, both, that shit
Well, that's-
slipped under their
yeah.
radar.
And
But
also,
that's the whole point of Qui-Gon's character.
And I
It's
guess-
supposed to be like the first like change in the Jedi.
well, I would say that Dooku as well.
That's actually
If we look at it through the
Yeah,
now we're
Dooku's,
getting a
yeah.
bit Laurie, but
no, Dooku's
Darth
definitely.
Dooku or Darth Tyrannus, as they never call him, and it's very confusing. Why don't they call him anyway? But
Because Dooku's cooler.
It is way cooler.
I would love to have like
the
if I ever had a
Count,
lightsaber, I'd get that curved hilt that he
Yeah,
got. That shit
sure.
is hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, Count Dooku is not a traditional like Jedi. I mean, sorry, a traditional Sith. He's just someone who has abandoned
Yeah.
the Jedi Order and was so displeased with how with the structure of the Jedi Order that he went too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
It was basically a ode or a switch to, I'm gonna say evil because I can't think of anything else, directly because of the Jedi, and that is sort of a thing that continues throughout, which I find really interesting.
Well, you talk about the characters and how, what did you say, that they're a bit...
But people consider them a bit bland.
I
read
thought
one-
they had a
one
fair bit of
person on
charm
Letterboxd was
to them.
like, it just looks like everyone is so bored in this movie. It's like, well,
Well, the problem is a lot of the time they would obviously be trapped in those like blue screen prisons.
Yeah.
and they're also doing like serious scenes. Like it's not like they just kind of.
And like that shit would be difficult. You know, you're saying you're getting chased by a giant fish, and you have to be, but they're in just some.
You're sitting in a
bigger
box
fish.
on a chair.
Although I think-
down Goover fish.
I do actually think though that some of that.
about Jar Jar Binks
We'll get into it in a minute. What was Marlon saying earlier?
I just think that's like one of my favorite things rewatching it is that some of these and most of the characters have like a happy charm about them, and it's refreshing considering I guess on this, not refreshing, it is a bit strange considering the tones on the screen are mainly pretty serious as we addressed at the start, but it's just a little bit more lighthearted and playful, and I think it works for this film considering you said the audience is
But also
still
with the
young
also with the
teenagers.
Jedi in this movie, like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, like they're at the height of the Jedi's capabilities, and the Jedi don't fear. They don't panic, you know. They're pretty zen and stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that in all of those situations where they complain that Qui-Gon doesn't seem to give a fuck that they're about to be eaten by a fish.
Yeah, it's like they're getting
It's like-
gassed
yeah,
and
but
they go,
they're-
just
but
put your
he's just-
breather on.
he's
Dude,
just
he's
sitting
trusting
there-
the Force. Like,
because
Qui-Gon is
in the
all
originals,
about trusting the Force.
all the Jedi, like Obi-Wan was fairly still composed. Luke doesn't know anything, so obviously he's got a bit more vibe. And Yoda went nuts, and so Yoda's like all.
Yoda didn't know go
crack-
nuts. He was
crack
pretending. He was
goblin.
pulling a Hamlet. He was pretending to go nuts to test him.
Test him. And
I
then
mean,
just died straight away.
I feel like we should get into it. Thoughts on midichlorians?
Oh, that shit's stupid.
I don't hate on it.
Nah.
The thing is, like, I was not raised.
So goofy.
I was not raised
Why?
in a world where they didn't exist, so I didn't have the whole mystique of the Force, you know.
Well, you know what's funny
But, like-
is that only until I was like in my mid-teens did I actually understand what that was. Because when I watched them, I couldn't understand what they were saying about midichlorians.
Yeah,
so
just like-
it's just
so
your
I
white
didn't-
blood
so I didn't
cell
even- I
count.
didn't even think about it. I was just like, oh yeah, people still got the Force, and then someone said, oh no, it's like the midichlorian blood count.
Well, the thing is like the old I guess adage is like if you're gonna answer a question, the answer has to be more interesting than the question. When the question's been around so long, and that's why the Force is so interesting because it's like how does it work? And people come up with all their own answers.
It's
And
one of those
the
things
answers
that
are never as good as the question.
But it doesn't need. It
But-
doesn't need to be explained.
like,
Like it doesn't matter.
You also don't.
But the thing is as well, like I guess that's the point though. Like the answer's not that interesting. But like I as someone who has studies science and likes science, like I go that's cool. I prefer that than some
Yeah.
mystical
And
like.
I do think that that including midichlorians does shift the idea of the Force and of the Jedi from something that is religious to something that is scientific,
Yeah.
undeniably.
Yeah.
But
But I think you get this mixing. It's so interesting because the midichlorians is still not just it's just cells or something. It's not just like something that it still has this mystical like living quality to it.
Yeah.
And that's what's still so interesting.
I think that what might be important here, therefore, is that George Lucas is saying, by including this, he's like, well, okay, we can actually scientifically figure out whether or not someone is strong with the Force.
Yeah.
Therefore, making it not necessarily something that is of a Jedi, but something that is in all of us. If Anakin never got found, I mean, he would have gotten found because of the Force, allegedly, but like, the point is to question the system of the Jedi, not the powers that they hold. And I do find that interesting, and also the way that he explains midichlorians is fairly interesting. And I don't think it completely takes away from that mystical stuff that as you were talking about. But I think it's kind of unnecessary, but I don't think that it takes away from anything. And I also just view these films as like George Lucas's works through auteur theory, especially with this one. He's in control of all of it. So he's including it for some reason, either because he thought it was neat or because he is trying to say something with it. And
Yeah,
in that case, it could be either.
We don't
It
really
doesn't
have the
matter.
right to say that he's wrong because it's
No.
his thing. He can do what he wants. Like clearly, this is the sort
Not
of
anymore.
the version of the story that he wants to tell. Yeah, well.
$4 billion. He could probably make his own $4.
But you know what? You know what people
$4
think. You know what people think is that he's going to buy it back.
No fucking way. He doesn't want to do that shit. He hasn't even made any of his art films that he promised he was going to make. And I want to see those art films. I love THX.
I need to watch the Last Picture Show.
American Graffiti is pretty good.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Really?
But I need to watch it.
pretty good.
I haven't
Wait, shit. The Last Picture Show isn't George Lucas. I'm
It's
thinking
not.
of American Graffiti. I have them both on my watch list next to each other.
Oh, okay.
Got them confused.
Because I was a bit confused. I was like,
I think I have seen the Last Picture Show.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have.
Yeah, there we go.
let's
Fuck.
check.
Well, I think this movie, like, it has qualities to it that are actually good. I just don't know why. I think the only reason it got hated so much is because people wanted a different movie, and they didn't get what they
Absolutely.
wanted.
Yeah.
And then it was like, fuck you, this sucks.
And it was obviously using CG. There was a lot more of that than like the miniature models, like the aesthetic.
There was a lot of like.
But there was, I know. But what I'm saying is like
they used it a lot.
they just wanted the originals again. They
Yeah.
wanted the same charismatic stuff. They wanted the same good versus evil story. They wanted the
Yeah.
same type of shit. And this is like a really slow burn, really sort of webby fucking thing. You know,
Yeah.
that's just not what they were after.
I think I have sort of figured it out. So last night I watched this version of the film. It's
Took
not the
you 20
widescreen,
years
it's the
to figure
pan
out
and
the
scan.
plot.
No, but I figured out why people hate it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant.
Oh.
No, I got it.
I thought you were like, I just figured out the plot.
Honestly, though, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't get that. But
It's an art film.
it kind of is in a
It
way.
is. It's like
If you
artsy
think-
as fuck.
Yeah, I love it. But anyway, I watched this version of the film. It's the theatrical cut of this movie is different to the version that was later put on DVD, and is different to the version that was put on Blu-ray.
What about on High Movies?
On what?
High
Legally.
Movies?
I don't. I'm assuming.
Hey,
I'm pretty sure that was the.
FAPS podcast does not advocate illegal
I'm pretty sure
torrenting.
that
I
was
bought this shit
same
3
version as well.
times.
I don't know which disc I had.
You would have had if you had the DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's basically the same cut that would have been on.
I think
the
that was the
Blu-ray.
one that's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Disney Plus, that's the
Yeah.
same cut.
That's
except
where I
for,
watched it on Disney Plus.
they added CGI Yoda, and I think they changed a few more things, but nothing drastic. But the point is, seeing these visual effects through like in a VHS format or even on a DVD format, because I did check out the DVD briefly as well just to compare. It's shit, and it's really difficult to watch, and it's really early noise reduction. So it doesn't have, and The Phantom Menace was the final, prequel film to be shot on film, and I think that's a real shame because if you go back and look at the 35mm scan of The Phantom Menace, the grain hides a lot because we're getting grain over Jar Jar that matches the grain on the image,
Yeah.
and it makes the image more cohesive because of the film out process, and we just don't have that. In these newer versions of the film that have this noise reduction. I do think the version on Disney Plus and on the Blu-ray looks pretty good. But I think watching it this way for so many years and critiquing the film only from in this way really does detract from a lot of the visual power that is going on here. Because I think you watch it on a big screen, you see that widescreen and it's like most like, and with the sound as well. The sound is such a huge part of this, especially during like the pod race. It's so like incredibly like overwhelming and awe-inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
But you're watching that on like a VCR. It's not a VCR, sorry, like a CRT TV. Or then later you have the widescreen CRTs and then the plasmas. Then it just doesn't have that same quality, sound or visual wise, unless you have a huge fucking setup and you're watching the Laserdisc. And those were incredibly expensive. And so I just think that a lot of the stuff has been lost over time. Because I found myself enjoying it a lot less watching it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say it's a bit quicker. It doesn't have the same sort of flow to it that later was developed when they recut it a little bit more. And so yeah, I just think that's a big element that was missed. I know that you guys actually probably don't have too much to say about it, given that I'm the only one that has seen all these versions.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, I remember the scene where they're like in the trees and they've got the big ship. Well, like I can't remember what they're actually called, but you know, like the droid ship things that are coming through, destroying the forest. And Jar Jar Binks is like running, and he's just like floating on the ground. It's like I forgot how far we've come.
I mean, I think he's quite a great effector though, because he does have those cartoony expressions. There's one part where he goes, you're crazy. Like, what did you think was gonna happen when they're in the ship and his eyes move like out and forward and his arms move, and it's just like I think it's a great effect.
There's just some times though, like where they made Jar Jar look right at the camera. I'm like, fuck off.
But also
Fuck
they've
off, Jar
been
Jar.
doing that.
Jar Jar Binks is such a weird character, bro.
But also is
There's
he
sometimes
that
where there's
annoying?
times where it's like he's funny as hell, and then there's times where I literally have no idea what he's saying.
That is the
I was like-
biggest issue.
It's like what? They fixed that in the Clone Wars show. Obviously, they have a different voice actor, I think. Yeah, they do. So like you can understand when Jar Jar Binks is in the show, like you can hear him so clearly.
Yeah.
But in this movie, there's times where I'm like, what the fuck is he saying?
Like,
And it, like you miss the humor, you know. So it's like the same thing with like Watto. Even sometimes I was like, what is he saying? But like it wasn't as bad.
Nick
Like-
does an excellent Watto
No,
impression.
I'm not doing it. No.
Oh.
No.
Actually, that what did we think? Like, you know, the classic critique is that there's just racist stereotypes.
Oh,
like-
majorly.
But do you think it's like a
don't think so?
racist
no,
thing?
I
or do you think it's just like it's just a
Absolutely.
thing? Like,
I don't-
like
I
he's
don't-
trying to.
I don't think he's trying to be
Is it
intentionally
malicious or is it
racist.
just like he is inspired by them in a way?
So,
I heard one
what
rumor-
is anti-Semitic?
No, but I mean, like, I'm thinking,
so bad.
Yeah,
I'm thinking more so
the Trade Federation.
yeah, the
I heard
Like,
a
but
rumor.
gun rate?
even
This is a
Watto's-
Reddit rumor,
Vice
so
versa,
this
right?
could be totally wrong, but apparently, like, they had the voice actors record the lines, and then, like, had, I think it was, like, Thai people record the lines, and then they had the voice actors redo the lines after them. If that's true, that is insane. I don't know if it's
George
true.
Lucas made Temple of Doom. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
George Lucas is Buddhist Methodist.
Also,
Well,
a
that makes
socialist.
sense considering the
Yeah.
Even Watto,
Allegedly.
even Watto's
Billionaire.
even Watto's dialogue is fucking anti-Semitic as fuck.
Jedi
chicks
don't work on me. Only money.
It's so good. It's so funny.
I've been watching it a
that's
lot.
the
I
one
don't know.
I do all the time.
It's so funny, bro.
I do like though. There's one line in this movie that has been referenced in the Lewin household since I was a child, and it's is it legal? And he goes, I'll make it legal.
Yeah.
And that one
that's
bit
good.
there has been referenced.
There's so many good memes in the movie. Bro.
Yeah, there is.
It's actually it's pretty good for that.
Like, squeeze me.
Yeah.
I like. Look. I think Jar Jar's is not as nowhere near like more annoying than like C-3PO.
What do we think about like? Do you think Jar Jar Binks?
Oh, I gotta disagree with that.
Well, you think C-3PO is annoying?
Fucking shut up, Twink. Jesus.
Oh, Jar Jar is just.
I think Jar Jar is
so
worse than
fucking-
3PO.
I
Dude.
mean C-3PO.
You just
He's
want
a
a bit
classic dude.
I know he's a classic, but like I remember rewatching the Phantom Menace for the first time in many, many years. This was a couple of years ago. I just put it on. I was like, yeah, why not? And then Jar Jar did something and I laughed and I just went, oh no. Like,
What's
I was
happening?
But C-3PO, I think, is actually funny. Jar Jar is, for the most part, unintentionally funny.
You're laughing at him.
I'm
not
laughing
with
at him, not with him. C-3PO is actually quite amusing.
By the way, what do we think about like the claims that Jar Jar was supposed to like have an actually important role? Because you know, there's the I don't know if it's from like the behind the scenes documentary where George Lucas goes like, Jar Jar's the key to all of this.
Jar Jar is the key to all.
Yeah,
Like,
like
he's just taking the
like
piss.
surely
That's
that
the
can't
best.
be
That's
for
the
real.
best thing though, because Jar Jar was like the most hated.
That's why,
thing.
but that's what because then obviously Attack of the Clones would have been
and
hacked.
Attack of the Clones.
He's in it for
He
1
would've-
second.
But that's
He must
what's-
have got cowardly, bro.
But that's what's so good is that it was like fine, I'll cut Jar Jar out, but he's still like in it barely. And in Attack of the Clones, as soon as he is in it, he walks into the scene and then he literally stops and turns to the camera and smiles, and it's like I'm still here.
And that's what I love.
I'm still in the movie.
That's what I love about George Lucas, and this is why I relate to him as a filmmaker. Because he will always put something that he thinks is funny in a movie, like, over the quality of the movie.
Yeah.
And, like, he's like, I really like cars. What if I just did a big space car race in this movie? And I love that about him.
Although there was that rumor that was literally just done so he could make video games and make money.
Yeah, but that's
smart.
simply not true because
So-
he loves... That could be
That's true. American Graffiti is
American Graffiti is
car
all
race.
and he
thing.
he's raced cars before. He got into a car crash when he was a teenager. Like, he loves cars and loves racing cars. It is clear to me that was just from his love of that. And THX 1138 ends with a car chase as well.
Yeah.
It's clearly he's like, I want to put a car chase in one of these. And that he, you know...
And it doesn't hurt to make an extra bit of money from video games.
I mean, what was that, like 5 video games with the Phantom Menace that came out that year?
Holy shit.
The man's was on a marketing like spree. He's clearly someone that enjoys making things outside of the picture just as much as
So
the
you're
picture.
gonna say he enjoys making money?
Is there?
Oh, that he does.
Is there some sort of insinuation that Jar Jar Binks dies at some point before A New Hope?
Well, he would.
I sincerely hope so.
Order
I mean,
66. Does he
Just
get?
gets massacred.
Well, he was.
He's not a Jedi.
But-
I mean,
When he was, what was his role? He was a politician.
Yeah.
yeah,
But I
didn't
can't
he
remember
like
what he was.
allow like Palpatine?
Yeah,
to
he
have
was the one.
special
Who, yeah, he
powers?
was
Yeah,
the one
he-
who did this. So actually,
but-
maybe he would have got like special treatment. You know?
And I
No,
also-
Palpatine would have had him murdered immediately. He'd be like, he is annoying. He is annoying. Get him out.
Yeah.
But also, like, I do think it is like this thing of like if Jar Jar being the one to bring him into power, it's almost like this thing of that's another thing that Qui-Gon did. Qui-Gon brought
Save
Anakin,
this.
brought Jar Jar.
Yeah, Qui-Gon actually fucked shit up.
Yeah, and it's not that fact. It's more just the fact that like the system of the Jedi did not allow for the vision that Qui-Gon had.
Yeah.
And I think also there's a line where even that line I was just making fun of, the "I'll make it legal" line. That's basically saying what is right and wrong and what is legal and not legal is only dependent of the people who are in power. And you must question that because those have influence and those have bias. Really kind of compelling stuff or to say to kids. Did it translate? I don't know. But if the 3 films did follow it the way that did follow that sort of rhythm, I think the reception to this probably really.
Well, I think it does translate. I wouldn't have translated to them young, but I think the thing is that little kids when they watch this at the time still love the movie because it's colourful and there's a nice lightsaber fight and a big car chase thing. And then they've grown up, and I think what's special about it is, and you see nowadays, there's so much more prequel of, because as the kids have grown up, they've started to appreciate it as well. Plus, to be fair, the older people than that have realised how fucking awful Disney is, and so they've
Well,
gone,
yeah.
"Oh, I treated
Yeah,
you
don't
too
compare.
harshly."
Exactly.
prequels."
You compare the prequels to the originals, and then you compare the prequels to
Sequels.
the sequels, and this wipes this out of the
Yeah.
I think.
park.
I was going to say this earlier, but I didn't get the chance. I think the issue is most Star Wars fans are stupid. And they don't care to think of these as a film. Like, they don't think of Star Wars as a work of cinema.
Well, they view it as like
They
a
think-
religion.
Not even that, they just view it as a franchise, as a commodity, something to behold, and they don't ever consider, and so it's this thing of where, in comics, right, The Amazing Spider-Man, that run, so many different authors have worked on that line, and it's the same line of comics, it's the same character, and it changes according to them. So in their opinion, and in that way of thinking about it, characters are the thing that are interesting, not the people who are creating them. I completely feel the opposite. Even though George Lucas didn't direct all 3, but that's also because it makes sense.
You mean of the original?
Yes.
Yeah, because he did all 3.
Yeah, he did all 3 of these. It does kind of show. But because of that, therefore, I consider it through the lens of his other work. I think about THX, I think about the Indiana Jones films. Haven't seen American Graffiti, but I keep that in mind when looking for visual stuff. A lot of Star Wars fans do not do that. So now, as I've gotten a bit older and I saw the 3 Disney films in theaters, there's only maybe one of them that at least tonally or thematically syncs up with what George Lucas was doing, and that's The Last Jedi. And the fact that most Star Wars fans went against that because they thought it wasn't Star Wars just proves to me that they weren't paying attention.
But I think the problem with The Last Jedi, it's a good standalone movie. I think the big problem is it just kind of cuts off Force Awakens, and so from a perspective of the trilogy, it kind
Continuation.
it kind of falls apart. But that's not the fault of the
No,
movie.
I actually don't. I don't think that's true. I think the problem is that people shuttle over The Last Jedi because they're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
For the wrong reasons. I mean, there's some obviously big criticisms that you can make that are fair enough, but.
Yeah.
Then J.J. Abrams, they brought him back, and he is trying to keep telling the story he started with Force Awakens.
But the problem is J.J. Abrams has
And
this
so
whole
all
thing.
he does is he tries to undo the stuff from The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
And then it
he didn't
fucks
go
everything
along.
up.
He didn't go along with
They
it.
should have just
Yeah.
kept going.
Or get someone else to do it. But here's the thing, right? Is The Empire Strikes Back continuing the story of A New Hope? Fuck no. It's kind of telling just a new story. At its core, sure, the rebels are being chased by Darth Vader. That's it. And they still want what they want, but it's a different objective. Additionally, as we're talking about now, the Phantom Menace is a sharp, left turn from the original trilogy, especially Return of the Jedi, on purpose. And same with Attack of the Clones, sharp turn from this. Star Wars is always about sharp turns.
Saying it's
But
reactive?
The one thing, it's always been reactive. It's always about a relationship. It's like a tone poem, it rhymes. One of the things that is made fun of what George Lucas was saying. But it is true. It's like a tone poem, it rhymes. It is making things mirror each other and contrast each other. That's what's interesting about it. what the what is it called? Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
The issue with that is that it doesn't do anything interesting. Because say what you will about any of the 6 Star Wars films,
Hell yeah.
none of them are boring, really. And none of them are not distinct, and none of them don't have something... All of them have something interesting happening, and something strange, and something provocative, and something strong.
Yeah.
Force Awakens doesn't. But Force Awakens is made better by The Last Jedi by having such a sharp turn from that. That is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Whatever the Rise of Skywalker is doing is something else. It has no... And shocker, Disney didn't have an interesting political point. Shocker that. It's a miracle they
I think
ever
the
got
other
to
problem
make
as well is like J.J. Abrams has this whole thing of like he makes the first movie and he has the mystery box. What's in the mystery box? He doesn't think about it. He just sort of like does
But
something.
that whole movie.
Like that was like
felt
with that's like I remember he's done like a talk on that. It's like that's not a
It
good
felt-
thing, dude.
No.
You just haven't been bothered to think about it more.
He's not an interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
that movie is nothing.
Yeah.
It's like eating a vanilla wafer. It's just nothing. It's
Yeah.
just a.
And we needed it at the time. God, I needed it. Like when I saw the Force Awakens, that was
When did that
everything
come
to
out?
me. That was 2015.
Dude, I remember that
and
was
then
so
Last
awesome.
Jedi was
I was so
18.
excited like when I saw that.
Yeah.
17.
Because it was such an event, like your whole family would go watch
I went
it.
on my birthday. I went
Yeah.
with my dad. We went to gold class, and I was so
Yeah.
excited. And I saw it then the next day, and then I saw. I remember I was on holidays when Last Jedi came out. So Dad and I went to go see it together in Hong Kong, with like the Chinese subtitles, and it was a great time. I mean,
Sick.
and I just remember as soon as Rise of Skywalker came out, the credits rolled. I got up and I left. My family was still in the theater. I had to get out. It was very.
Dude, I watched
disheartening.
the premiere of Rise of Skywalker at
Yeah.
South Bank, and they overbooked the cinema, so I was sitting on the stairs, and the movie fucking sucked.
One of my mates
So it was
passed out
horrible.
Well,
in The
those-
Last Jedi because of the sound.
Oh my god.
speaker.
But the goddamn Rise of Skywalker, because if I ever like start rewatching Star Wars, I tend to watch so many of them. I get on the hype train and I just watch like all of them.
Yeah.
And if I'm really on it, like I have been a couple of times, I've then gone and watched like I usually fast forward through Force Awakens and just watch a little bit, and then I watch The Last Jedi. And I've tried. I'm not joking. I've tried 3 times to rewatch Rise of Skywalker for the second time. And
fell asleep second
the furthest I've ever gotten through is I got through 50 minutes before I turned it off because I was so fucking enraged. It was such a piece of fucking terrible piece of shit.
Dad and I talk about the release of that film like our personal 9/11. Like I swear to God.
I remember sitting there in the theater being like, what the fuck? And then the movie ended and I was like, oh, that's Star Wars is dead.
Dude, I had people booing during the movie. It was actually kind of funny. Like towards the end, especially.
I think I
like,
tried.
When Rey and Kylo like kiss, it's like what the.
And then like bring each other back to life.
They were so
Force heal.
they were so close to brilliance
Has
there.
massive
If they had
implications.
let Rey die and Kylo lived, I would have been like, thank you, Jesus. And then they killed Kylo, and I wanted to flip the
I
fucking
think
table.
even if they did that, what's the fucking point of any of this? And I
It's
think
not canon, bro.
yeah, no, and this idea, fuck this idea of canon. They are just works of art. It's not real. Do people not know this?
it's
But
not
they're not
canon.
real, actually. And so, if you don't want to watch the things or consider them, it's okay because they're fictional works written by different people and directed by different people at different times.
Dude,
in
the
different
canon is
contexts.
sacred, bro. What the
It's
hell are you
not
saying?
sacred. Canon is irrelevant, and canon is making cinema worse. Because
Canon,
do you
bro.
remember the thing? The worst parts of this movie is when
Dude,
it's
no,
like,
the
remember
canon.
C-3PO? Remember R2-D2? Remember that? Isn't that cool? And it's like, okay, man.
Oh, that just reminded me. You know when they're like congratulating R2 for being a beast as droid, and they're like, "Oh, what's his number?" And he just like reads the side of him, and he's like, "Oh, R2D2." Like, what is he
Where the
reading?
fuck? Yeah.
Is he reading like that? Does that have like his number or something?
No, he's just making some shit up.
Like
He
it's
didn't
like
want to
George
insult
Lucas's
Queen.
direction was like, oh, just I don't know,
Just
look
look
at
over
him.
there at the,
It's like what?
at the droid, you know.
Yeah, and you just that's one of those things you just sort of
You go with it.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I can't let us finish a Phantom Menace conversation without just professing my love for Duel of the Fates.
Well, I suppose I briefly mentioned it when I said
brought it, but then you shat on it immediately.
No, I think it's
after.
good. I think it's good. The whole like.
No, but I mean
thematically,
I
just
mean
think
like
that
the
one part.
Yeah.
You mean the actual like
There's the one part that's dumb.
Speed running and the flip.
That and like Across the Stars are probably my two favorite Star Wars songs.
Yeah,
They're
but
just
you wanna-
so
The whole
John Williams-
thematically the last
Yeah.
fight so.
But if you
so
want to tell
awesome.
the audience about about like the idea of Duel of the Fates and stuff like that, and the
No.
trilogy, do you know shit about that?
I do, but forget that even. It is one of the
Why?
coolest things I've ever fucking
Yeah.
seen
I could-
on a cinema
Well,
screen.
I was saying, could you imagine
Ever.
being in theaters and you've watched the first Star Wars, you've grown up with them, and now you're here, and then all of a sudden Darth Maul, you're like, what? He's got two. I didn't know that was allowed. Yeah.
And then one of the best score
yeah,
tracks
fucking brilliant.
ever. is-
Someone actually was mentioning how like some of the action is shot in such a sort of glacial pace and from a far distance that John Williams saw that and was like, I have to save this shit. And so you'll see images where fuck all's happening, like Amidala's just in the left corner of the frame, just running very slowly, but the music's dun 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 dun, like these sort of crazy scores just booming off because they're like, this is actually intense. You
Yeah,
know? Pay
yeah.
attention, please.
Because you explained at the start the
Yeah.
thematic
Yeah.
impact of Duel of the Fate.
Yeah, that it's by what's it called, Qui-Gon dying at that point. It basically seals Anakin's fate.
Yeah.
I also need to bring up at that point that there's this one point where Obi-Wan says, "Why do I have the feeling that we're picking up another pathetic life form?" And I'm like, that is such like private schoolboy energy right there with his little fucking rat's tail and shit. Another pathetic life form. Who do you think you are? And
Don't get me started on fucking rat's tails, bro.
yeah, I wanted one so bad as a kid because of this movie, and I'm so glad my mother didn't let me.
Do you guys know
Seriously, the ugliest
Jet?
fucking.
Jet is it George Lucas's son from Revenge of the Sith that gets killed?
No,
Yeah.
I wanted that rat's tail so bad when I was like,
Is he the one who goes, Mr. Skywalker?
No. He's the one that-
He's the one who
with Bail Organa.
Yeah.
he like starts fighting the clones and Bail Organa
yeah.
tries to save him and then he gets killed and
Oh.
Bail goes no and flies off like a
Oh,
coward.
yes.
Classic scene.
Yeah.
No, that's
George Lucas's son.
That kid saying that, what are you going to do? Is so funny. That shit's so hilarious. I love it. I was like, kill that kid.
Also, was it supposed to be a twist that Princess Amidala was Padme? Because I've never interpreted. Because I
I think
already-
it's supposed to be a twist to the characters in the film, obviously.
because
but
no,
Yeah,
like
but they're
is it
just like,
supposed to be a
oh,
twist
not
to
to
us?
us.
No, I
It
don't
is
think
so
so.
obvious.
Because I don't know. Because I'm just like I can't tell. Because I was like I
There's
only
the
knew
line
it as a kid.
where Qui-Gon's like the queen.
No.
Well, no, he's like the queen is on my side or some shit. Or like
Queen
the
trusts
queen.
my judgment.
Yeah.
You should too.
And then she's like, well, I don't approve. And then you're like, oh. Yeah, I don't know.
The Queen will not approve. The Queen doesn't have to know. Well, I don't approve.
Yeah.
She doesn't like that.
One thing that I really don't like about the Phantom Menace is I think it should have ended after Qui-Gon's funeral. I think the celebration scene.
That's
That's just a mirror. That's just a mirror.
Celebration.
and that song is fire.
And also when Mace Windu's coming through,
That
and it's
song's
just not
fire.
Samuel Jackson.
But
Yeah.
I
Love
just
that so much.
I think
Thank
it for me it works so much better.
It's just some random
You just
dude.
cut after the.
It would have been more sincere,
Yeah, but-
certainly. But I also think that kind of gets to the point of it, that they are celebrating the start of
yeah.
the most
The beginning of the end.
outrageous war that the galaxy will face. And that's so interesting. Qui-Gon is dead. The person who is going to destroy the Jedi Order is about to rise. And Palpatine is standing there with them. Is
And
he?
everyone's cheering.
Yeah.
And Palpatine is
the last shot.
In
like,
that scene, I noticed they used a double of Jake Lloyd.
Oh, during like a wide.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's okay.
No, not even. It's like a
probably had to have
medium.
his lunch
It's
break.
like a medium.
he had to go to
It's
school.
like a medium shot. It's like it's not that far. You can see the face.
Dude,
As someone who has seen this movie too many times, I didn't notice.
Well, I noticed it, and
The
it
Mace Windu
flipped
one
my
I
shit.
liked, though. I just think
It
that's funny.
flipped my shit. I was like, "That's not Jake Lloyd. What the fuck?"
Did you know did you notice the Mace Windu one?
Yeah, there's like a fake.
When they're
Mace
like, it's
Windu.
like when they're coming off the ship and it's just some random black guy. It's like not
a
even.
bald guy too.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly supposed to maybe be Mace Windu,
Yeah.
but like also Yaddle,
Yaddle.
unimportant. Don't need to mention it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was goaded, bro.
want to reinforce the point as strongly as I can that the film is a cautionary tale. It's incredibly politically interesting, and the idea of resources and stopping resources from coming into a country that is at the center of a political conflict to try and get them to sign a treaty to give over land while blocking off their communications is very relevant to today. and that some Star Wars actors
And as it was coming
should
out,
revisit it.
you had the Middle Eastern War kicking off. It was
Yeah,
just before 9/11.
one of the characters inspired by George Bush. And I don't know which one. No, not George. Bill Clinton. And I forget which one it is, but I
But
know,
all the oil wars and shit.
Probably the old
happened in
white man
early
with the
2000s.
bushy eyebrows.
And then
Oh, the other thing as well that kind of pissed me off was when Qui-Gon didn't really have an idea of what a Sith was. Like when he's like, oh, he was trained in the Jedi arts. Well, surely Qui-Gon has been educated. He's a Jedi master. Surely he knows what a Sith is.
I always just took that as him talking. Wait, when did he say that?
When he's talking, they go
talking to
after
Anakin?
they get first attacked. He's talking. Well, Anakin's there, and also Obi-Wan.
I'm pretty.
Is it just to be nice so that
I honestly
Anakin
just
doesn't
thought
have
it was
any
him
idea?
teaching it to Anakin. That's how I always read it, but I do not.
Yeah, I guess I had that feeling, but it sort of still was just dude, did you know what a Sith is?
It is odd.
Because when he's talking to the council, I even think he's a bit he's not very oh dude, I think I just fought a Sith.
No.
They're like, oh, what was this thing? They're like, what was this guy?
Red.
I mean, the only way it would maybe make more sense is if you go into Legends and he fights people like that all
I'm
the time.
not nerdy enough for that.
I don't, and I don't care because I look at
It's not
everything.
Legends.
Yeah.
Everything is just ignore it or not.
I look at everything and I'm just like, well, what's the point? And also, I don't really like Darth Maul. I think he's probably the
Dude,
weakest
I
part of the
love
film.
Darth Maul.
But what's his deal?
It's not about the movie though. It's about
No, he's
Darth Maul
cool.
after the movie.
I don't like his Clone Wars shit.
I
either.
love
I
him,
think it's
bro.
incredible.
That's
and then the
the best
Rebels,
shit.
it is so good.
My dad's seen all of that stuff.
You haven't?
You haven't seen Rebels?
I haven't seen. Well, it's just.
I didn't
look, I
finish
watched the
Rebels,
first season and I'm like, fucking. Ugh.
Fair enough.
There's only.
Nick's
there's-
about to.
haven't seen any of
his
that
brain's
stuff.
I
about
have
to
a threshold.
explode.
I have a threshold. Even I have a threshold, and that's it. I will watch the live action shows. I'm watching the
Did
Acolyte.
you watch the Clone Wars?
I haven't seen all of it.
damn.
I've seen the last 3. I thought it was okay. I hate Dave Filoni.
I've seen all the movies
Fuck
and
Dave
Andor,
Filoni.
and that's it.
Have you seen the Ewok films? You seen Caravan of Courage?
I watched a bit of it.
I've seen Caravan of Courage.
Played Ewok Hunt on
Christmas
Battlefront.
special.
You guys played that?
Yep.
No, I don't play
Isn't that the nightmare
Sorry.
thing?
It's like a.
Oh wait, no, that's
Have I
it.
just-
You play as you play stormtroopers and
Oh.
you get hunted down by the Ewoks
Yeah.
at nighttime.
That's pretty
remember
hard.
that.
That's pretty
actually.
sick,
That sounds
yeah.
really fun.
Anyway,
Have I just derailed this? I'm
It's
sorry.
alright. We were
I
wrapping up
think we
anyway.
were. That was
You wrapping
That's
up,
just something
Isaac?
more
Go for it.
depressing.
All right, ratings.
Yo.
Honestly, I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10, obviously. But yeah, it's
I'm going.
on rewatch. Dude,
giving it the same.
So much better.
Giving it the same, yeah.
Like
it's a 6.
it's kind of whack to think about.
It's got some cheesy, goofy shit.
Yeah, but
and
it's
some
pretty
things in it I don't like, but
Yeah.
it's really fun.
Yeah.
I
And
think I had it.
it's a very special Star Wars movie.
I had it at a 6, I believe, and I liked it slightly less than the time before
Oh wow.
I'd seen it. So I'm gonna also give it a 6. So I don't think it's changed for
Right.
me.
I mean, I think I had it as a 4.
But it is so much better than my conception of it 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I saw on my letterbox that in 2021 I gave it a 2 out of 10. I was like,
I think I had
this
something
thing
along those
sucks.
lines a while ago. But
I was young and naive.
yet again, I'm going to give this film a higher rating because I thought about it a bit
That's
too much. I mean, look. I have the rating that I want to give it because I think it'd be funny.
Wouldn't it be fucked if you went on a podcast and talked about the Phantom Menace?
Is that whatever?
That'd be
Gave
fucked.
it a
That's
10.
pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
Gave it a 10.
I'll give it a 9. I'll give it a 9 because there's some stuff I don't like about it, but I think
Yeah.
ultimately it's actually no. I will give it I will give it a 10 because I think my rule about this is that
Yes.
a 10 out of 10 doesn't always have to be a perfect movie. It just has to be a movie that is strong enough to make a really significant point. Sorry for
Agreed.
tapping
And
the
you
tape.
and you love it too.
And I do love it, and I
Yeah,
will defend
agreed.
that movie.
Agreed.
But also, talk to me tomorrow. It might be an 8 or a 9. I don't know.
All right.
Hell yeah. Nick?
Right, so I had to pick. Oh my god. So I had to pick, and it's Dancer in the Dark by Dancer in the Dark by Lars von Trier. It is something. It's a film
It's not
starring.
Star Wars.
It's not Star Wars. It's not fun. It's by Lars von Trier. It stars Bjork, who also does the music for it. And I didn't know anything about Bjork, which I'm sure will get brought up, but I didn't know anything about her. And yeah, Lars von Trier is a odd fella, and I've seen a couple of his films, both of which I really liked. Antichrist, which was really fucked up, and House That Jack Built, which was actually really, really great in my opinion. And I wanted to like look at more of his work, and this is one of his earlier ones, and one that's like really highly acclaimed. Essentially about this Czech immigrant in the States, Selma, who's going blind and has been working all these shitty jobs to save whatever money she can for her son to have an operation so he doesn't have the same blindness problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she really loves like Hollywood musicals and tends to, you know, tap into sounds around her and start to imagine that she's in a musical, which is to say that this movie is partially a musical as well. It's also
It's
I think it just
absolutely a
isn't.
musical.
yeah.
It's just not a.
Well, it just takes a while for the musical bits
dark,
to get going.
thematically dark
It did.
musical.
I was like, I wanted to turn this thing off, and then they was like, "Oh wait, there's a musical number." Okay,
And yeah, it's pretty fucked up. This movie's pretty fucked up, and at points it was hard to watch. I was actually going to say, like, kind of just jumping straight into it. The middle point where what's his name, Bill,
Bill is the
took
police officer.
took the money. In that scene, I remember when he, like, she went to take it and he snatched it back or something, or like pulled the gun. I remember like doing this. I was sitting there in my bed, like my hands were on my head, and instinctively I'm staring at the fucking screen, like going, "What the fuck is happening?" Because this is a super dark, super emotional film, which is really interesting because I immediately want to bring up that a criticism I heard of the film is that it's emotionally manipulative.
But like, is that not what every movie is?
Well, I was
It's
gonna-
manipulating your emotions. It's like what it
I think
does.
it's more about the context of its production.
Well, I mean that
And
is
how it was
that is
made.
that is a factor.
How it was made.
More so, like, Bjork didn't have a good time on this.
Yeah.
Oh, did she not?
I haven't done too much research into it, but I do know that. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a very long time before she was in a movie again. What was it like?
Well,
the whole thing?
she actually said that she would never do a movie again after this, and she technically hasn't because like she's in The Northman for one scene, and she's in like she was in another film between Northman and that for again like one scene, and that's it. And they were like people that she was good friends with, and just doing a tiny bit for that. But yeah, this kind of the production around this really sort of fucked her up, and we might go into that, but. I find that comment a little bit weird, yeah. Like what Isaac was saying, kind of that every movie is trying to manipulate your emotions. And I think that this is just I think it is a really well told story. And I didn't find that it was sort of. Because there are some movies you watch where it sort of wallows in its emotions and it's trying to wring tears out of you or wring some sort of reaction out of you. Like they just sort of keep building and building and building in the melodrama, trying to make you go, oh, you know. But this was overall actually quite a subtle film, I think. There are some points that are unbelievable, you know, and it can be frustrating at times because there was some stuff that was really stupid.
Like
in
when
the
Bill
movie.
comes back from the dead.
Well, that's the musical though. That's
Yeah.
just
Oh,
her
yeah.
like imagining that.
No, but there are points in it that are very sort of goofy. Like when she's shooting him and the wife is sort of standing there
Yeah.
and all
In
of
the
that.
stairwell. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's just not, like that just not would happen. If your husband's got a gun on you and he's already been shot, would you really leave? Would you, you know, there's so much about it. The whole court trial was ridiculous. You know, the father bit I thought was ridiculous.
It was
But
funny.
I
though.
don't think that, like, is that not. I feel like that's something that absolutely would happen.
I found it. I
The
found
thing
it.
that just pissed me off, like I know it's the entire point, was they just like how fucking like why would you not just tell what
The
you were
truth.
doing? And I understand that's the entire point of the movie,
Yeah.
but it just got like it actually got me mad. Bro, I was like, this fucking dumb bitch, bro.
And that's one thing, actually, and that's why I don't think it is manipulative in the sense that a lot of the times they sort of will give you this perfectly innocent character, or like
Yeah.
they put a dog in the movie that's so cute and then it gets fucking killed, you know, type thing. And she's not a flawless character. Like you feel such great sympathy towards her, and I
Yeah,
think that's a large part just for her really well done natural like performance.
Excuse me.
But she is a frustrating character, especially in the second half.
That
And I was
is-
sitting
yeah.
and I was sitting there going,
But the
"For fuck's
frustration is
sake."
definitely the point.
Yeah.
But like you're frustrated because you're like you don't want her to die. You're like you
No.
don't have to die. Like,
Yeah,
you
this-
can easily solve this problem.
That death is the snap is.
Okay, also, is like. Were hangings still a thing? at this
think
point,
they
I think
just-
America
I think-
has
No, there are states that have
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
state to state
That's
difference.
That's interesting.
I don't know if it was like
Because I thought that was just like a. Because I was like, I didn't bother to look it up. My bad, audience. But I was kind of like, it's a very evocative, very
This is the first time I've ever seen anyone get hanged.
No, it was.
I didn't even have like
That's-
any idea of the fact that there was a trap door.
Yeah, I
That
was
was
wondering
insane.
about that, and I think, yeah.
And people
I
just
actually
sit there
I went to
watching.
the old
Melbourne jail.
Melbourne
Yeah.
jail,
Mhm.
and
Where they
when you
hung
go
Nate
in there,
Kelly.
like they would hang people in front of all the cell blocks. Like the hanging station was right there.
Yeah, just at the end of the hall.
Yeah, and you can, if you're in your cell, you could look out and just watch one of your prison mates just gone, and you stand there.
Did I
and
also?
go,
Yeah, I was also like, I really enjoyed the female guard.
Yeah, the dynamic
would-
between them
yeah,
is really strong.
Yeah, that was awesome. Because like towards
Oh yeah,
when
that's
the,
right.
when the hanging was
Yeah,
happening
yeah.
and
The
like
ranger.
she was freaking out.
Garang.
I
Yeah,
didn't notice.
Yeah, she was a ranger. Yeah,
I think the
Like, just,
music,
like, that whole
the
dynamic
musical,
was so
the
good.
musical stuff was really creative.
Yeah.
and I really admired, especially like that 107 Steps song.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, it wasn't my favorite song in the movie, but the way they managed to sort of do it, where you're still hearing her count the steps whilst it's going on, I found quite impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't give any of that credit to Lars von Trier.
No, I don't.
Because, and I do think that, like, he owes her a damn lot for this.
did she?
I think.
Very good.
Oh, well, because every single song in this, I'm like, this is just a Bjork song. This is how her music sounds.
I've never listened to her.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not.
You're saying she would have written the?
She would have done all of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it sounds exactly. And from
I checked the credits. She wrote every song.
and
Yeah,
from the
okay.
time that this came out, that's 2000. It would have been around a time of like Homogenic, which is one of my favorite records from her. And it absolutely does like match up with her like her experimentation with sound and her high concepts, and she's consistently created great work. I didn't like her last album, that's not important though, but like consistently created great work throughout her entire career. And I think that she adds a lot to this, both in terms of her performance, but in terms of the music. And I mean, look, I don't know how much influence she had over how the musical sequences were shot, but it certainly does feel like she would have had some sort of influence on it, because like she's had songs that have like musical influence before, like It's Oh So Quiet. And yeah, it was great to see that. And I think that I will say though, before we get too much into the musical numbers, that I think that my least favorite part of this was the lines where it's like, sometimes I pretend like I'm in a musical. Because that feels very much like in like nowadays, it's like it's a really easy cop out of a way to like do a musical without committing to it.
Right.
And I would always rather a musical just say, this is a part of our format, this is what we make. Because musicals have been a part of film history, and you know, it's a cinematic standard that's been there forever, and we can just do it normally without needing to come up with a reason.
But
And I would rather them just have committed to it and never explicitly said out loud whether it was literally happening or not, because musical sequences are never literally happening. They're non-diegetic. And so it's fine.
But I don't mind at all when she's saying that. I think it fits so well with her character. In terms of her blindness and inability to actually be in a musical, she takes her environment around her and turns it into one. I think it's fine that she says it out loud, because obviously when you lose one sense, you tend to, I think, adapt to the others more. And so obviously she's communicating more, hearing more, seeing less.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I want to make the point that Elaine brought up, which is the fact to sort of not accredit Lars von Trier with this film success for the most part, because I read a really interesting quote because I started reading about the production of this, and someone said something that I think is really great. I think Bjork may have said it, which is that you can take, and she called them sexist directors. We're not going to go into whether they are or not, but you could take a sexist director like Woody Allen or Stanley Kubrick. They were her examples. And they can be sexist directors, but their films will still have souls, regardless of their state of being. Whereas Lars von Trier is a sexist person, but his films don't have a soul without a female presence. And like, it's through his female collaborators that the soul of their films is
Aren't like
introduced.
That's
all
the
of his
hardest
movies
thing.
like exploitation of women,
Well,
more or less?
Well, I guess there's exploitation generally, right?
Like, 'cause I've only seen
so my point,
this in the House of Jack.
my point was going to be was that
it's got Willem Dafoe.
Antichrist and House That Jack Built are both incredibly masculine, incredibly depressing, and have almost no emotions other than just really good at creating that sort of darkness, which this film definitely has, and that part would be the way her death is done is very Lars von Trier, and it's very disturbing, and I think it's achieved well. But this is a really emotional film, and it's warm in a lot of places, especially at the start, and sympathetic. And I definitely would say that's completely Bjork. I don't buy for a second that Lars von Trier wrote this really touching fucking story, because the evidence is not there.
It's clearly improvised.
Yeah.
It's
A lot of the film work.
You can feel
It's
it.
it's a home video.
how dare his name be at the beginning in as bigger letters than the title of the movie? Get fucked. I think
that's
I think
right.
that's kind of insulting, and I like the opening of the.
I wanted to ask about that.
Yes.
Do we think that was just sort of like introducing like the fact that she's going blind?
No, he's just seen 2001.
Oh, okay.
No, that happens a lot. That happens in
enough.
Antichrist. All of his films have like these sort of weird stark openings. They don't have it like that. Like,
But, like-
Antichrist opens with Willem Dafoe's schlong. And
It's actually double.
his-
His was
and his-
too big.
Are we not allowed to say penis?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Well,
Oh, you can say anything.
Nick's just using
no,
slang.
I just had two different examples of not saying the word penis.
And like a baby fall out the window or something. And then
Happens to the best of us.
and
Sorry,
then
the
Eric,
chicken
fuck
and
it.
mirror.
and the house that Jack built has all sorts of those weird like art, like discussions of art and all sorts of shit like that. Like, I think that's something that he's interested in. I was not sure at all what the fuck it was supposed to represent.
Well,
at
it's
the
like when you
start.
close your eyes and you see the patterns in your eyes. That's what it felt like to me.
Well,
But I'm not sure. I'm not blind.
two things. Dancer in the Dark.
Actually, last night, before I went to bed, like all the lights were off, and I went to the toilet, and I'm like keeping my eyes open, like, dude, this is what it would be like to be blind. This sucks.
That was my point. That's not how being blind
Yeah,
works.
Yeah.
The title is stupid because she's not in the dark. That's not how blindness works. Blindness
No,
is like
it's-
trying to see out of your
yeah.
elbow. That's always like the expression.
You can't see
You just can't see anything. It's
Yeah.
nothing. It's
Yeah.
not darkness.
Yeah.
So I'm like, not that it matters. It's a real nitpick. It's not important. But
well, I feel like it just depends.
Oh,
on
in terms of the silliness as well, like the doctor said that she had like a year,
And then
and then almost instantly she's now fucking
is that just
blind.
assumed as a time jump though?
No,
Well, I
Or-
assumed there
I
was.
think
I assumed there was
the
something,
times-
but I didn't think that it
Because
was
for
a
example,
whole
when
year or
she's
something.
when she's in like in the prison cell at the end, they like skip forward, like what is it, a week or 2 weeks or something, like just
Yeah,
in a
right.
cut. So I think the movie definitely
Yeah,
is just
okay.
kind of jumping, but it's just not
yeah.
obvious.
Inexplicably.
she does explicitly say it could be a year, it could be less, I don't know. And also, I did feel throughout the film that she was just getting blinder and blinder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, did they explain that to her in the doctor's office before she explained it to the co-op?
Yes.
I didn't catch that shit at all. I must have not been paying attention. That's on me.
Was there a scene in the doctor's office before?
I don't know if there was.
There wasn't a scene before.
It was.
No, there wasn't.
It's totally impossible.
There was
I think the one in the office was the one where she was at the
That was
doctor's office
after
about
her
something.
son.
the sun.
there was no doctor scene at the start of the film at all.
Yeah, she went to see him and did the eye test or whatever. That happened.
Oh yeah, no,
okay.
that,
Yeah,
I
but
think
that's
that was
different.
a different doctor.
Because when she went to the eye, yeah, that was a different thing. Because the eye test was so that she could get the job, and she just faked it obviously because she had the. But then the other doctor was the one that she went to. She went like down like the
Like in the
The
nursing
road,
home
yeah.
looking thing.
Yeah, there
The
was those two
footpath
different
near the.
establishments.
and that was yeah for her son's surgery.
Oh, okay.
She explains it though. She
Right.
yeah.
So obviously it's assumed to have happened.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Okay.
I love Jeff's character though.
Jeff, poor Jeff.
The guy is just such a cock, bro. He's just like, dude, let me be your boyfriend.
I'll drive you home.
Yeah.
You can put the bike in the back.
But
What
like,
do we think of the American Dream in this?
I just want to mention cucking first because I think that is like this thing of like with Jeff. I didn't see it as like a ha 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 ha. This guy.
Yeah.
I saw it as a this is terrifying.
Like he's a creep.
Like yeah, she's in danger.
I was the thing was
That
so
is the
weird though.
interpretation.
She didn't feel it didn't feel like she was scared.
No, she was.
You think like
It was
there was
very-
the one scene where she's like, like you're very nice. Like if I wanted
But
a
that's the
boyfriend, you'd be
thing-
my boyfriend.
No, I don't
That's the
think that
thing-
was
That's
actually.
the thing people do just to like appease the other.
Yeah, no, I
No,
felt
she's
that
just
scene.
trying to
That
stay
scene.
safe.
That scene.
She's trying to stay safe.
That scene I agree with, but the ones after that, she seemed.
I think she's
she
just
seemed more
desperate. No,
comfortable.
but she's just desperate.
That's also true.
I think that's
That
the
is
thing
also
is she's
true.
desperate. She's in a point of such danger and such vulnerability that she needs to go to someone who could
Okay.
take advantage of her.
The one question though is, would you sleep in a car if you felt unsafe?
I think that was a thing of emotional exhaustion.
Yeah.
And that's how I always read it.
Yeah.
And he's kind to a certain extent, but like his character is always one that is kind of framed as a consistent. I'm not going to say antagonist because that's too strong of a word, but like a little like let's back off. Like throughout the movie, just to sort of keep it going.
He also is definitely not very intelligent. So I think that was part of like the,
Jeff's got 3 brain cells.
like that was I think
Can't
part
pick
of
up
it.
some
Like,
signals.
yeah,
I don't think it's, but also that's not a thing of being unintelligent. That's a thing of being
Persistent.
being persistent, being a
emotional
man,
stunting.
being a feeling like you're owed someone because you're giving so much time to them. That old American thing of I visited your grandmother every day after work, and I went there for 100 days until she said yes.
And yeah, and then she's
You know, and that's how I always viewed it.
She was also 10 years younger.
No, she was a child at the time.
I made a deal with her father.
I waited every day at her school.
Donated 3 cows and 2 chickens.
And we were wed by morn. I just like doing the voice. But no, that's how I always viewed it. The American Dream.
I don't know if
it's
it's
interesting though. I didn't read it
it's
that way.
it's.
Nah,
I
I
don't
didn't
think
think
it's
about that
her because she didn't come here to succeed. She just came here because she's like, dude, I need to give my son this surgery.
But that was her. Is that not to succeed?
Yeah, but it's different though, because the American dream
No,
is like,
because
I live in this shithole country. I'm gonna move to this country.
The American
now
dream
I'm gonna be
is
awesome.
fulfilling all and every success and
Yeah.
reaching like the peak of the mountain where no one is above you.
Having your own
you've got
business
and you've got
and blah, blah,
everything.
blah.
You're the master of your own domain. Whereas she literally was just she needs some money. As soon as she got that money, she didn't give a fuck.
The other, I think if there is a character that is supposed to represent the American dream and
It's
to
her
dismantle
friend.
it, it's the friends / landlords.
Ah.
Those
okay.
no, because they are the people who own the house. They're said to have a lot of money, and they help her out.
Actually, that's an excellent point.
But I will say, because no one else achieves anything close to the American dream in this. It's just like proletariat, workers, and
The proles.
yes. But if they are trying to make a comment on the American dream, I don't think it's a successful one. I don't think it's interesting.
I didn't think that was a part
Maybe
of it.
it's. I couldn't.
It's there
put,
though.
I couldn't put like a real term on it, but there's. I think Julia is that Selma's female friend in the
Kathy.
factory.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy's the wife of Bill.
Is it not the other way around?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyway, the one in the factory, Selma's dancing, and she says like, "I will dance when there is music."
Yeah.
And I found that.
It's the-
Okay, is Kathy the?
She's in Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Yeah, it's Catherine Deneuve.
Oh, I don't know who people are.
I don't even know is Julia even a character? Because I think Linda's the wife.
I'm making
That's
shit
a
up.
great movie.
So
I think no, because
I think
Selma calls Kathy the
Umbrella
the
Cherbourg is such a
Czech
great
name.
movie.
okay.
What's the name that she calls Kathy? It's like some Czech thing.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Oh well,
She has the nickname for her.
but I
'Cause
thought
the nickname means like you're happy and something. I can't remember.
I thought like Kathy's line of "I will dance when there is music" as she's just depressed in this factory was really important. Whereas Selma is going blind, is poor, has to support a son that's fucking up at school, yet will still dance without the music,
And that's
even in the dark times. Which, as much as I think it's a cool name for a film,
It is a good.
it's a cool
Dance in the
name,
Dark.
but I'm also like, all right. I mean, a bit wanky, but there is this thing though of like, if she's like escaping. This idea of she pretends she's in a musical because her life is so sad and it's a way to deal with like traumatic experiences because that's what it would come from if it was anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel like it does that very strongly. Because I think what's happening here is there's actually 2 really interesting films going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's the musical segments and then there's the actual film. And I find it, and I understand that it's the year 2000. Something like this was not as prominent in terms of like a more, I don't know, not intertextual, but like evolved musical, a less traditional musical of this kind, where it's acknowledging the fact that it's a musical as a point of, I don't know what to say, don't know the words, but I don't know if the styles mesh. It's an
Yeah.
interesting experiment for the time, but it doesn't mesh.
no, that's completely
And I
true.
think that it doesn't come to the detriment of the film because the final scene is so beautiful, and and the fact that we are no longer in this musical world, but we're in the real world, and she's singing. That's a really beautiful, beautiful thing. But I don't know if it's same thing with like if you've ever seen An American in Paris. American in Paris ends with this 20, 30-minute long dance sequence, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. But that 2 hours before that are the most dull pieces of shit you've ever seen. It's just like a fine, okay MGM musical for the time. And I found almost a similar thing with this. That ending scene is so strong. It does so much. I cried. But it ultimately, I don't know if the stuff before that works as strongly. Or I don't think they are as congruent. I think it's a bit more messy than it is, realized.
I can't get away from the fact that it feels like a home video, and it's not something I want to watch in a movie. You know.
Have you seen Inland Empire?
No,
Oh,
I haven't.
give that
That's
a go.
David Lynch, right?
Yeah, that's 3
Have you-
hours.
have you-
We
both seen
were
it?
going to watch it in theaters, but then I can't remember why we didn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
guys, maybe
Well,
don't.
no, I haven't. But like the only time I want to watch anything like a home video style film is if it's a found footage, and even then they're done.
Dude,
pretty,
I kind of like the way it was filmed.
Me
though.
too.
I mean,
Because it made it
works in-
feel so like I'm gonna say dry, but not quite how I mean that. But like it felt dull in all the right ways. You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel because obviously when they filmed the musicals, it was also a lot more colorful. So I don't know.
Well,
but
I've got a note here that it makes me feel like I'm there just watching this terrible thing,
That's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fine with, but I'm not too sure how keen I am on a film where the point is it doesn't look nice.
I think that it comes from a history of like cinema verte, which is like what was called cinema of truth, which was a style of documentary in the 50s and 60s, with like a film called Election, following JFK, and also Don't Look Back, which followed Bob Dylan, and then like later directors like Cassavetes used that in a fictional format with like faces, shadows, that sort of thing. And watching this, I was like, this is cinema verte. This is what they're doing. This is it feels like a documentary of that kind, and it follows that tradition of employing that in fictional films. And personally, I really liked that, shooting it on those digital cameras in the 2000s. It makes it even more realistic.
It certainly does make it realistic.
But then
There's
we
the
cut to a musical number,
Yeah.
and we're still using the same cameras.
I think there's some fun in that, but I just am not too keen, and it's not my style of film where that's the main medium that you're watching.
Yeah.
It's not for me. I find it a shame that that's the point, and that's how it works, and that's the only way it could have really worked, really. But the story I loved. I think it's such a great story, and so I guess it draws you in and it keeps you in. It's not that long. It's what, 2 hours, 15?
It felt like it took me a while. I had to pause it quite a few times.
I mean-
It made me feel incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, I
to
watched
watch,
half of it and fell asleep, and then watched the next half in the morning.
as he intended.
And that didn't make it feel long at all. And
Shock it.
I know, right? I had an 8-hour sleep in
Two-parter.
between.
You like dreamt about it.
Well, last night I went to bed and Selma's voice was in my head, and that
That's-
was kind of scary.
Wow.
Like the singing, not the voice, her singing. I was like,
After this, I'll show you guys my Bjork impression. It's pretty
oh,
good. I'm not going to do it now.
excellent, yeah. But maybe on the bridge, try and get some
The view's not ready.
No.
try and get some acoustics on the bridge.
Yeah.
But I really loved the story, and I just can't
And like
give that same love to the style it's filmed in.
as a thing though, like it is an achievement as well to do something new in the genre of musicals, which is a pretty hard thing to sort of make any sort of new ground in. And I think this one does, because you've never seen a musical like this before.
Have you, Elaine? You've watched a lot
A
more
musical
musicals
with
than I
where
have.
it's
Than we have.
in what sort of way? Like
Well, in an interview with that I watched that had Bjork, she was saying how she did this movie because she, as a kid, she always wanted to make a musical where it was like just everyday stuff. Like you could,
Yeah.
like she's saying, like if we were in this room right now, like you'd have that chair and blah 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 blah. Like
But you've
rather
got
than this
that,
big
but it's-
extravagant thing.
It's also a musical in an incredibly dark, realistic,
Yeah.
disturbing tale. Like there are obviously some dark musicals before as well. Like you look at something like Sweeney Todd or something maybe, but that's usually it's pretty out there. This is a very grounded,
yeah.
very kitchen sinkian kind of.
But it's not. That's the issue, is that it is grounded. No, it's in a grounded movie. But the musical numbers are not grounded. They are just as exaggerated as all the other musicals. And so the issue for me is that, and I think it's the same thing that you brought up, in different ways, yeah, but it's that it's a movie that feels like incongruent. and inconsistent with its own rules and its own style, what it's trying to say, what it is literally doing, and how its pieces are connected. It doesn't feel like it is cohesive enough. And I ultimately get to the point of, what's the point of this movie? Sure, it's to represent this character. It's an interesting character, and it's an interesting story. What are we trying to say? Are we trying to say something about the legal system? Are we trying to say something about poverty? Are we trying to say something about disability? None of those things are that interesting in the way that they are presented in this film. And I think that is a key thing that is missing from this.
I suppose that's why people would say it's emotionally manipulative, because it's just like, wow, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's look how sad this motherfucker's life is. And that's fine, but there's other films that maybe do that sort of realistic thing where they sit with a character for a while as they're doing the mundane and see how sad their life is, and it never feels as
Jean
exploitative.
Billman.
Yeah, Jean Dillman is a great example.
But when you have those musical numbers, that's from her perspective and it's her imagination, and she's grown up on classic Hollywood musicals, so it makes sense for to replicate.
That's true.
And also there is a couple of those musical numbers which are obviously not exaggerated at all. Like when she's in her cell, that's just like one shot, basically of just her standing there, and then her on the about to be killed.
The cell is a little bit more dramatic. Like we have people like coming out of there, like things like.
That's when she's walking. I mean the one before.
When she's listening to the
she puts her ear to the vent and
the
starts
favorite
listening.
things one. I think that there's a difference between a musical number. So there's a thing called a backstage musical where all the musical numbers are performed diegetically. Those are examples of that, and so therefore I would not consider that one. I would not consider a musical number, because I also wouldn't consider her practicing Sound of Music to be a musical number either.
No.
So therefore, I don't consider that a musical number, but I do consider the final song to be a musical number.
But I don't.
And that's very
But I don't know. I just don't see why the fact that it isn't grounded technically makes sort of a negative impact. I don't find that inconsistent, because essentially you're from this character's perspective. She imagines herself in a classic Hollywood musical, so obviously there's no other way to shoot that than do it classically, because that's what she's imagining. Otherwise, you're in this sort of grounded story and shit, and all of the music in those larger than life stuff is still done with that use of the diegetic sounds and all of that. Like, it's built organically. I don't really see the inconsistency there.
I think maybe my issue is therefore, because if she loves Hollywood musicals, right, and musicals of that era that they reference, the musical numbers, A, do not sound like classical Hollywood musical numbers. They sound like Bjork songs, and B, are not shot or edited like them at all. They do not, they do not mimic that style in the slightest. Those musical numbers, which is traditionally just a wide shot,
Yes.
they rarely ever cut.
Yes.
And if they did, it was very particular and it was very simple. They tried to do as little as possible to show them dancing. And so for me, I go, okay, why is this person with no musical ability imagining this very intricate, genius Bjork song, other than the fact that it's Bjork in the film and Bjork is playing the character? And I think that's maybe what stands out to me as well. And also because, as you said, it was shot on this early digital camera, it doesn't have the aesthetic quality of it either. It's not even in the same aspect ratio as most of those musicals. Actually, well, that's not true. If we're going to the 50s stuff, then they started going Panavision, but I guess it's less so, and it also does tonally break it up in such a, okay, we're doing this now. And I don't hate it. I kind of like the tonal shift, and I find it interesting, but I think that those musical numbers would have been more interesting if it wasn't predicated on this idea of old Hollywood musicals, because that's not what they're doing.
Right.
And as a fan of those, not as much as my friend George, hi George if you're watching, it is this thing of it doesn't mesh together. And that's not to say I didn't like this. I did like so much of it. It had a real impact on me. But I think that it's not... I think it's a film that should be questioned, and I think that discussions or films like these should make us consider how we feel not only about different film forms, but about genre and about intention, and how some of those things can get lost in translation, and how the ideas of what those things are can change over time.
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
yeah. I think
Or
the
something.
movie. I think the movie does like
Or something, yeah.
have a tension between
Type shit.
what it is and what it would kind of like to be. So I think that's a fair point. I don't really have much else to say, because I think a lot of the stuff that happens is sort of falls under the same ideas when we discuss it, so you can't really like go, oh, this scene's different to this one. But yeah, I don't know. I guess
Did you
character analysis-
overall enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, enjoy is probably not the right word.
No, I didn't enjoy it either.
But I like, but no, yeah. I don't, what word would you?
But I mean, like,
I had
like
fun.
you don't
I
like
suffered through
appreciate it, maybe.
Yeah, appreciate
You've
it,
said
yeah.
before that musicals.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say actually, to be honest, the musical parts were my least favorite parts of the
Okay.
movie.
Yeah.
I'm not a big musical guy. I mean, I love La La Land, but like I haven't really seen many other musicals, and they're not really my thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But this, I like for the most part enjoyed. I didn't hate the musical stuff. I just
For me, when it comes
wasn't
to
really like
musicals,
the way I felt about it was when it cut to the musical parts. I was like, well, can we get back to the story now? Like can we go back to the story?
for me, like in terms of my opinion on musicals, I don't think there's anything better than a good musical, and there's nothing worse than a bad one.
That's actually
Yeah.
true.
That's
What-
just how it is. There, like a bad musical. Like I remember fucking Into the Woods. I don't know if anyone saw that. Fucking terrible, awful movie. Like just painful. But
Great musical though, like the actual musical. The film has
Yeah.
it's the film adaptation.
Like-
problem.
but singing in the Rain or La La Land, some of the greatest movies ever. And that's
Cherbourg,
because
as we were talking about earlier.
yeah, Umbrellas of Cherbourg
I've
as well.
been meaning to see that for
Yeah,
ages.
they're great stories.
I hate
We will get into cabaret later.
I did not enjoy this.
What is wrong with Bob Fosse? Are you, okay.
Look, I would need to
All that
rewatch it.
jazz. That's a great
All That
one
Jazz
as
is
well.
a great one. It's a very technical
Yeah.
musical, but it's a
Meaning to
backstage
see that.
musical.
All That Jazz
One
is
of my,
amazing.
I mean, that's inspired
Yeah,
me.
I just don't think the musical style really like.
Yeah, I think
Like I always find like, can we just go back to the story now? Can we
Yeah,
just do
no,
the story.
yeah,
But when this, I don't know. It's just I guess it's just me. Like I didn't grow up with musicals. I never really watched them, so it was never really like.
But that's the problem that some musicals have, and like why some of those peak Disney ones are so good is because the story progresses through the songs,
Yeah, that's exactly that.
which doesn't always happen. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of the case for like those early Hollywood movies is because the talkies only like really like came into motion in like the 30s, so people
First
want
was
to come
in
here.
like 27, I think. Was
It
the
was,
first.
with Jazz Singer, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of those, like, it's like, oh, we want to come hear something. They want to hear music. Oh, we want to
Yeah.
see dancing.
Yeah.
We want to see a musical that isn't just on stage, but even closer. That's sort of the appeal. And I understand. And it's from a long sort of, it's just a tradition of the medium. But yeah, I mean, undeniably, an incredibly interesting film, though.
Mm-hmm.
Dancer in the Dark. And it's a very unforgettable movie, that's for sure.
and it's received really well.
Yeah, I mean, it won the Palme d'Or that year, right?
I
Yeah, it
didn't know that,
did,
but
yeah.
received better than I thought it would have been as
And
well.
she won Best Actress at Cannes.
Good on her.
Really?
Yeah, which I think.
I
is
think it's
fucking
deserved.
sick. Her one proper movie role wins Best Actress at
Has she
Cannes.
done any like training, or she just
No.
like rock up to set one day and was like, okay,
It's a kind
Let's
of
go.
unsettling film. Like,
Other than
no,
her.
sorry, performance. Her. She is an unsettling character.
She's an unsettling
But
person.
also, like physically looking at her as well.
she was also saying
Not in a like she doesn't look ugly, but it's just a weird like
no, she with the glasses.
playing like a blind character. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. It just looks strange,
yeah.
and then her voice is
There is
strange.
a feel to it. There is a feel to it.
It's-
yeah. But she was saying in that interview I was talking about before that like she really got into Selma when she was filming. Like
Hell
she
yeah.
just became
She
Selma.
gouged her eyes
Yeah,
out.
like her friends would like call her or something, and she'd just be Selma. And it was always like they were so like, what the hell?
She's method acting.
Yeah.
There's a cut in the film where someone's riding a bike towards the camera and then it cuts to something and I don't remember what it is, but I wrote it down because I thought it was cool. I'm just
Hell yeah.
I just thought I should mention that.
That is a very Marlon-esque note.
Something happened that was cool.
I don't remember.
Wait,
but
is
this
this
was
the-
good.
I have such a shocking memory.
The close and it's like the front of the wheel, and then it cuts to whatever else is next thing.
Yeah, I think so. Hope so. Might have been that.
Also, I just remember the other line when what does the guy say when they buy the bike? Where they're like, women are like, is it rust or something? No, what do they say?
Yeah, women are like rust.
Is it rust or it's rust?
No,
something.
it's rust. Women are like rust, and then he just repeats it.
Was that Jeff who said that? Who said that?
No, it was
Do they ever
Phil.
like say
Bill
the
says it.
punchline of the joke?
No, the punchline is that the joke is that his dad used to say, and he has no idea what it means.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
I'm like, what? What does that actually?
Get everywhere and ruin things.
came
I
up
don't
with
know.
that?
Like,
But I don't know. It was funny. Though.
well, because rust erodes things. Women are like rust; they erode you. I
That
don't
were like the
know.
one
Is
scene.
this
where
the
I
meaning
kinda-
of the film?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It was the one scene where I was like, that's actually funny.
That was probably Lars von Trier's only line that he wrote, some misogynistic bullshit.
You're just writing in the back, like, killing it. I was going to do the impression then, and I'm like, no. I'm holding it. I need to restrain myself.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. What a picture.
We good for ratings?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off.
Yeah, go.
I'm gonna give it. I'm borderline between two. I'm gonna give it a 7. I did like it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I kind of want to give it an 8, but
That's what I'm giving.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
torn
Giving
between
it
the
a-
two.
I think I'll give it an 8.
Fair enough.
I think ultimately it does more good than I think I'll probably give it. I'll give it a 7 just for now, but it
Yeah.
could easily be an 8 in a week, or it could be a 6 in a week.
Exactly.
I don't know where I am.
I wish we could do the halves, but I don't think it'd get too
I
fucking
think
complicated.
what's the point? Yeah.
Yeah, 7, borderline 8, but 7 for now. And it's not a movie I'm going to revisit, so it'll probably be
God,
a 7
I'm
forever.
gonna watch this every night before I go to bed.
Yeah, it's Christmas tradition. It's from the time before.
Gather round.
For a timeless tale. That's from the time.
Tale as old as time. Now, with that, I have my pick for the month of June for our June podcast, which
Well,
will probably be at the start of July because our May podcast is in the middle of June
Oh yeah,
for uni reasons, essentially.
It's crazy.
Right?
it's probably going to be.
Sorry, guys.
It's probably
It's
going
not
to be.
Elaine's fault.
There's actually,
we all had uni and we were
exams.
lazy,
I was
and
gonna
then we
s-
wanted a guest, and then
I was going to say, I like, there's nothing really coming out until like the second week of July, which is probably when we're going to record it. So we might actually be making like.
skip the June episode.
Well, no, but just like, don't call it the June episode. This is just our next episode.
Our next
Well, that's true, actually.
episode.
We don't really have
Because
it's just kinda
I'm not
happens.
joking, I'm looking ahead, and literally the next thing we're going to cover is second week of July, Kinds of Kindness, and Maxine probably.
That'll
will
be fun.
Mm.
I'm excited to listen to that.
So I reckon we'll probably be
Alrighty.
doing those.
Well, I'm picking Frank Perry's 1968 film, The Swimmer.
The fuck?
Yep.
I've heard so much
Swimmer.
about that. I really want to watch that.
So,
What is it about?
okay, well, it says
Okay.
about it's
I'm
about
guessing it's someone who swims.
this man that notices
Nice
abundance of
power.
backyard pools and decides he'd like to travel 8 miles home through them.
68, my favorite year.
Okay.
in cinema history.
Really?
Looks like it could be really pretentious and really fun.
Well, I saw a clip of it and I was like, hell yeah. And
Alright.
I picked it. And none of you, I thought you'd seen it for some reason. It's such a pain trying to pick films, and one of these two has seen it.
The thing
so
is,
I
a lot of
just-
the time, like, we'll have seen a movie, but we watched it so long ago. Like Mirror, for example.
Mm.
Like, I had basically no memory of that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so we'll actually probably see you mid-July, and we'll
Yeah.
just then probably, because we'll do Deadpool.
there'll be 2 episodes back.
we have
Yeah, we'll basically do one episode, and then a week later we'll do another episode, but then just delay the release.
We
and
could
that's
do
how we'll
another
catch up.
incognito video in between.
We could.
if there's
Well,
anything.
yeah, we'll talk about that, but
Yeah.
1968 has some great films, you're right, Elaine.
Thank you.
Rosemary's Baby, 2001,
Faces.
Once Upon a Time in the
Yeah.
West, Planet of the Apes,
Once Upon a Time in the West.
The Yellow Submarine.
Oh.
I don't think it's a good film.
No,
I
I've seen it like 3 times though. Like I keep trying to like it.
No.
Right.
It's just like whatever. But thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
thank you, Elaine, for coming on today.
Thank you so
Long
much
time
for
coming.
having me.
Hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you for letting me yap. I appreciate it.
Good yarn.
Thank you.
How long was this one?
2
It's
hours.
pretty long.
This felt
What
long.
did it say?
2 hours and 20 minutes.
That's really
just
long.
about.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking long.
Good thing I
It's
didn't
the,
edit.
it's the Lawrence of Arabia.
I really hope I don't. I really hope I don't have a parking ticket.
This is your Bohemian Rhapsody.
We're 2 hours over what we're supposed to be.
Alright, that's it then.
Yeah, thanks for
cheers-
listening.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.